Evening, everybody.
You'll have to appoint Tony to vote for
Yes.
Lynn.
I am going to call to order the November 13th, 2024 Planning Board meeting. If we could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We've got a few people missing tonight, Jeff and Lynn. I will appoint Mr. D to vote for Lynn. That gives us 8 voting members and a quorum. All right.
That's when everyone gets back. Ann is going to be on her way shortly.
Yep. All right, so we will start with some administrative board work. I've got approval of minutes, and Mr. Rugg, I believe you got one set of minutes in there, correct?
Mr. Chair, I will make a motion that we approve the minutes of October 2nd, 2024, as presented tonight.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second, and a roll call vote, starting with Giovanni.
Aye.
Tony D, aye.
Arthur Rugg, aye.
Jason Knights, aye.
John Cruz, aye.
Jake Butler, aye. The minutes have been accepted. All right, regional impact determinations. Mr. Trottier, anything good?
Nothing.
Besides trying to figure that thing out?
I ain't gonna be able to figure it out. I'm gonna give up right now. You'll have to help me, Jake.
I don't know if I'm of any help.
I can describe to you what I have to talk to you about, but
Do you have any regional impact
no, I
determinations?
do not.
Fantastic. All right. Discussions with town staff. Do you have anything to talk to us about?
Absolutely.
Huh.
Unfortunately, I won't be able to show you pretty pictures, so.
What do you got?
So, just to bring the board up to speed, back on August 7th of this year, the board had conditionally approved the infrastructure plan for Village on Technology Hill. I don't know if you gentlemen recall that particular meeting. One of the conditions was the development necessitates the upgrade to the existing Akira Way water pump station off of Akira Way. So just wanted to report that the developer and the city of Manchester Waterworks had come up with a memorandum of understanding. So there were some improvements that had to be done to that pump station. They have agreed to the basis of design for that impending work, which includes, basically, they need to upgrade the pumps within the building, some of the controls. Again, some of those stations, they have telemetry that speaks to one pump station to the other. Replace the pump station, so they'll be cutting off the roof, removing the generator from inside of the building, placing it outside. It's a gas-fired generator. And again, so like I say, I'm just here to report that that's been accomplished, and pre-construction meeting was held today.
Bless you.
The work is impending, or is pending, probably within the next week or so, the work up on the hill will commence. So
Fantastic.
just on the picture on the right, yeah, so again, as you see if you can zoom in, Sylvia, please. So again, they're gonna remove the roof. If you recall, that pump station is directly across the street from Technology Drive, where it intersects Akira Way. They're gonna take that generator and place it to the front of the building. So I had told City of Manchester, as well as the TF Moran, that I'd be bringing that to your attention. That's that one. Sylvia, don't run away, please. Oh,
You've got an expert coming.
thank you. Welcome back.
Kelly, welcome back.
Sorry, I got held up.
Not a problem.
The second one on the agenda. Yes, yeah. So what we have here, staff was approached by the occupants of 209 Nashville Road, that's occupied presently by Wind Waste Innovations. That was where the former Charles George Trucking was located. So that parcel is zoned industrial too. They had approached the town staff regarding the installation of a 10-foot high privacy fence with privacy slats. So it's a chain link fence with the vinyl slats to it. 209 Nashua Road, that was an existing non-conforming lot. And if you recall, there was a residential residential 55 and older that was constructed to the west of that parcel. So, Wind Waste wants to be good neighbors, they want to be proactive, and they want to install this privacy fence. Again, just to be proactive, really. The Londonderry zoning ordinance, 514C, regarding fences, states that the fences installed on properties in the commercial and industrial zones shall be subject to planning board approval. Staff discussed it. What we're here tonight to do is just to indicate, to let the board know that staff feels that we can handle this administratively, and we'll give them a green light and let them proceed. That's all, if there's any questions.
I'm confident you can handle a 10-foot tall fence.
Why, thank you very much.
Not a problem, sir.
There'll be no
Much taller
problem.
than me, but I can do it. Tony, maybe,
Mr. D?
I'm a good jumper.
okay, you want it a little higher?
No, my question is, are the neighbors in favor of a 10-foot fence?
Again, it's on it's on the industrial property. So,
Well, I understand that, but there's a neighbor on the other side of the fence.
yep,
What's the temperature of the neighbor on the other side of the fence? Are they okay with a 10-foot fence? Or do they want chickens instead, a chicken walk-through? What do they want? We always talk to the neighbors, right?
again, we can direct them to discuss it with the neighbors. I think, again, they're
Is
trying
the
to be
neighbor
proactive.
the 55-plus development that's just finishing up
It's
off
completed.
Old Nashua? Am I in the wrong spot?
you're right.
I think you're across the street.
Yeah, you're on the wrong side of the road.
No,
I'm east of it, aren't I?
you're correct.
You're on the
So
other side
again,
of
but-
102.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
it comes off of Old Nashua.
Oh.
Not Cross Farm, the other one.
It's Hannafin.
Hannafin Way, yeah.
Yeah.
So again, Tony, the issue is, though, is again, that, so if it was a existing lots, this is similar to the waste management site up north, where again, Charles George Wind Waste was there first. So again, there is no buffer between the AR when they construct next to the industrial. So they do have some vegetative buffer, but it's not like 100-foot buffer or similar to what if it was vice versa.
We can certainly have a conversation with this property owner and see if they have any information on.
I just think it's a good idea. I think one of our things seems to be, in fact, Arthur usually leads the parade on that.
Be good to your neighbor.
On connecting with the neighbors and making sure everybody's friends.
Yep.
And it just,
Yeah, I think it's just letting them know.
if for no other reason, good public relations, right?
Is the board okay with us handling that administratively still, or do you want to?
Yeah.
I'm fine with it.
I think it'd be handled administratively.
Yeah. Yeah,
My
as
rec-
long- yeah.
My recollection, Tony, is actually that Hannafin site is higher, so they might still be looking over the fence. So I don't want a 10, I want a 20-foot fence. So they can.
Well, I know there's a
they can get
potential to
little-
open up a can of worms, but I
Right.
still think it's never a bad idea to communicate with neighbors, if for no other reason, just to let them know what's gonna happen, so that
Yeah.
they're not surprised.
Yep.
Like, oh my gosh, what the heck is that?
Understood.
That's all.
Yep.
Just,
We'll advise the
thank you,
applicant.
Thank you.
I'm happy.
you.
Anything else from town staff?
That's it.
Sylvia?
No, I'm good.
Kelly?
All set.
All right, so let's get into some old business. We have a conceptual discussion for a proposed industrial use at 2 Ash Street, 22 Ash Street, 42 Ash Street, 4, is that Bike Ave, 6 Bike Ave, 8 Bike Ave, zoned Industrial 1 in Woodmont Commons PUD, Pillsbury Realty Development LLC and Hyrax Dairy Partners LLC are the owners. Trammell Crow Company is the applicant, and this was continued from November the 6th. Come on up. Gentlemen, good evening. How are you?
Very good. How about you?
Good.
Thank you for having us. So I'm Pete Hines. I'm with Trammell Crow. We are the developers looking to build a commerce park with industrial uses on 107 acres within the WC12 portion of the Woodmont Commons PUD. We're really excited about the development. I love doing business with you all, so thanks again. The general discussion here pertains to utilizing the underlying zoning from a use perspective and not really having a definition of building code and dimensions for that use. So we're going to be utilizing the underlying industrial zoning, but there is no definition of an industrial building in the Woodmont Commons PUD. And it goes a little deeper than that, but that's the general reason we're here today. And prior to our site plan submission, just wanted to have a conversation with you all, make sure everyone is on the same page. We've had a few conversations with the town staff, but wanted to make sure we reached as broad an audience as possible.
All right. John, Kelly, you have any input?
Not at this time. I think, is somebody going to go through the table?
We can. And for the record, my name's John Sokol. I work at Hinckley Allen. I'm a land use attorney, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the developer. And again, this is really more process oriented. It's making sure we understand it's a little bit unusual situation where we're going with a use allowed in the underlying zoning district that was just rezoned, that's not expressly called for in the Woodmont Commons PUD. And there is a process to do it by coming up with compliance alternatives. And, you know, these are not the exact proposed compliance alternatives that we're proposing. This is our preliminary thinking. But we wanted to give you a flavor of the thought process that we're doing, and just to make sure people are on board with really the process more than anything else. And so what we've done is we've looked at, for industrial uses, what's allowed in the underlying zoning district, what's called for in the PUD, which of those might apply. If nothing applies at all to our type of project, then we've provided a substitute standard. And as we refine and finalize our site plan application, we'll be giving all of these design criterias and principles a hard look. And that's the type of analysis we'll be doing, and then we'll be looking to negotiate or come up with an agreement with the board about what's the most appropriate for the type of industrial commercial project that we're doing. So we can run through those if you want, but we're not looking for the board to bless each of those things tonight. It's just an example of the preliminary analysis.
Yeah, if you want to go through them for the board, that would be great.
Can I just, Mr. Chair, if I may?
Sure.
I do think it would be helpful to go through these, not in great detail, but just to get somewhat of a consensus from the board on your view with respect to what the board thinks is applicable to some of these compliance alternatives, because it is ultimately up to the board to determine if some of these will meet that criteria associated with compliance alternatives within the PUD. So if we could just get through that exercise, I think it would be helpful to how we should move forward with the applicant.
Sure.
So I think the three most important ones to touch on are going to be the use, that kind of frames the discussion, and the landscaping and the lookbook. The streets are also a bit of a touchy subject, but that, and we should talk about the streets as well. So the use per the PUD, we can utilize the underlying zoning. That is going to be what we choose to do. Our plan is to build a 4-building commerce park. That's going to be a range of uses from R&D, biomanufacturing, to logistics. That's in concert with uses we see across southern New Hampshire, very diverse tenant base, and we want to make sure that we're casting a wide enough net that can accommodate all of those types of users. That's kind of the quick and dirty on use. It is our intention to utilize the underlying zoning for that. As it pertains to streets, I think this is an interesting one because the underlying zoning is in direct contradiction with the PUD. In an industrial zone, you are not necessarily going to be promoting through traffic, pedestrian or otherwise, in that setting, primarily from a safety perspective. This is commingled with landscaping, where we do want to provide a significant amount of open space, both public and solely park accessible. And how we design that open space, those walking trails, in concert with the streets and how those flow and how we provide access to them is something we're working through. But I don't think that this is necessarily going to be an environment where we're going to want to have ample pedestrian traffic alongside potential truck courts. So we haven't necessarily finalized our plans of the open space. It will be significant. We are intending to meet the overall acreage as required by the PUD for those open space requirements. How we connect that with the street networks is to be determined and will flush out within the next month or so.
So Peter, if I can ask you a question then, so you're just thinking of an industrial sized road?
Yes.
Yeah, without any sidewalks?
In certain places, not all.
Okay.
For example, there will be one primary artery that connects 3 of the buildings, and that will likely have sidewalks. But there is a loop road around the buildings that will be primarily for truck ingress and egress.
Yeah.
That likely would not have a sidewalk.
Gotcha. So just so that the board can kind of understand this, so what I think what Peter's kind of describing would be something similar to some of the roadways up off of Pettingill Road, Webb Drive, Industrial Drive up that way, Innovation Way up there. So again, those are 30-foot wide industrial roads,
Yep.
mainly for truck traffic.
Good question.
And again, like Peter says, up there or over in Woodmont would have a sidewalk associated with it. Just
Correct.
trying to give them an idea of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And what's
yeah.
similar here in town.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mr.
Sorry
D,
for not elaborating.
So, yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, let me drill this down because my ADHD is like flying all over the place right now because I really have no idea what you're talking about. But I think, I don't think it's just me, and we have people on TV that are watching, and there's people in the audience here that if I'm having that opinion, other people are as well. So let me see if I can help you and drill down on this thing. You're asking us if we might entertain for the project that you're going to build on a piece of land inside of the Woodmont Commons PUD, would we entertain a combination of the PUD rules and the rules of the underlying zoning that may match, mismatch, undermatch, whatever, depending on what's going on? Like you said, there's a loop road that won't have sidewalks, but on a main road there will be sidewalks. So would we entertain that?
Correct.
Now that said, am I close?
You're spot on. I just want to
Okay.
say that process is mentioned in the Woodmont Common PUD Master Plan in Section 2.2.1.
Understood. And so remember, we have people watching on TV. So and so I hope you did hair and makeup before you got here, because I did. So, I didn't do nails, though. So the fact is that if we think about the PUD was meant to be an overarching document that lessened some of the restrictions and took out some of the potential conflicts in a PUD that's all connected. Is that a fair, am I close on that? Is that a fair statement? But the underlying zoning always stayed with the land, yes? And many times, if not most of the time, the underlying zoning is more restrictive than less restrictive than the PUD. Okay? And so you're saying for tonight's discussion, would we entertain the mix and match instead of all PUD or all underlying zoning?
Exactly right. Plus, if neither makes sense for the project that's allowed, the use that's allowed in the underlying zoning consistent with the overall master plan, would you consider an alternative to either? Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, gentlemen, you can
Yeah.
continue on.
Thank you for the clarifying. Appreciate it.
Summed it up better than I have, so I appreciate that. Moving on to the landscaping, and again, that same general theme echoes throughout this. You can see here there's some descriptions of conserved green space and what's the other definition? There are two, and shared open space. So there's another component of this where we are just a portion of WC12. So we are basically taking the proportion of WC12 that we are looking at the total acreage of these spaces that was required in WC12 and making sure that we are meeting that proportionate share. So in here you can see that we do meet that total proportionate share of open space. Over 50% of our development will be designated as some form of open space. And then the lookbook. This is really the crux of it. If we were to have to comply with the PUD here, we would be looking at the R&D designation, which is a two-story building. 60% of the building frontage is gallery. There are a lot of issues within it that make it not a market industrial building in our view, or one that would be easily utilized by most tenants. As an example, the 60% of the front yard being a window. Industrial users, whether that be research and development, biomanufacturing, or some sort of warehousing and logistics operations, aren't going to want people being able to walk by the front of their building and see into their warehouse storage or lab areas. There's safety and security risks associated with that. There will be storefronts for tenants in their offices, but it will not be, hopefully it will not be 60% of the overall frontage. So that's, I think, 4 of the primary points. Most of the other areas we are complying with both. But it's really the design of the buildings, the landscaping, where we think we're going to be flexible enough to comply with the PUD, which is much more restrictive than the underlying. And the streets where we'll have a bit of a mix, and then the use where we can comply with the underlying. So
All right.
I know that's very vague.
Very.
Don't necessarily have
Very.
a full ask, but wanted to socialize this with you. It's going to be obviously a long site plan process.
Put up a map,
Wanted to get the jump on it.
Of the area?
put up a map, yeah, so we can see
Yep.
where it is.
Peter, this is mainly the property south of Old Rum Trail, too,
Correct.
Correct. Yeah, entirely.
So it would be, you can see the dirt road, if you will, of exit 4A. It would be the area south of that,
Underneath that, yes,
right where it says Madden Road, correct?
Yes.
Mhm.
All right in there.
yes.
And then if I remember correctly, actually a majority of everything south of Madden Road, you said was gonna remain wooded. If I remember. Didn't you guys come present something?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, a majority. It's tough to say exactly, but a
Where?
very
But
large,
it was,
very
yeah,
large chunk
that
of
was
it,
the,
yeah.
yeah.
There will be a significant there.
yep.
You're saying below Madden Road, there's going to be, you're going to leave it natural?
Not
areas?
in its entirety. No, there will
No,
be
okay.
buildings below there, but for example, the large parcel to the southwest, most of that to the southwest is going to be undeveloped.
It's going to be what, excuse me?
Undeveloped.
Okay.
Will remain in its form or open space in some fashion, and similar with the southeast. There is a significant buffer there that we are trying to maintain. We're not going to be having anything more than emergency access to Ash Street. Really trying to make sure everything is focused on
The
that
exit
Old
forward.
Rum Trail and the new exit. That is the.
Okay, that's good to
That is
hear,
the
because
prize.
the residence is along Ash Street.
Mhm.
I was curious about that. One quick question about the project as a whole. Is the property that's abutting the Seasons Lane area on the north part of the project there, is that part of this, what you're talking about?
No.
Because
No.
I didn't see it in the listing as far as the map and lot numbers.
No, it's so Ann, see the map right now?
Yeah.
It's everything south of where the old Rum Trail is, nothing north of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but this, okay.
This
What do you mean
discussion,
by Old Rum Trail?
This is Old Rum
This
Trail.
right here.
The dirt,
Okay, no, the original Old Rum Trail goes through that bottom part. That's what I wasn't sure what you were talking about.
And you're
All right,
probably
so
the only one that
exit
knows where
four.
it
I know where both is now.
We'll call it
The Old
exit
Rum
4.
Trail is close to Ash Street, and
Yeah.
that's right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they need a consensus? Is that
So
what-
I want to just real quick, we'll go through a little bit of how we usually do this here. Let's see if staff has any input. We'll come to the board, and then we can start talking on consensuses and how the board feels. So I will start with staff. Mr. Trotter.
I have nothing, again, as Peter says, we've met once or twice, and again, we've kind of kicked it around, and I think they've come along a little further, and they have a better idea of what, what relief, if any, they need. I have nothing new to add.
Kelly.
I think I'm mostly caught up on this, but I do think at this point, for staff, it would be helpful, and for the applicant, to hear from the board, just if you're open to this type of idea. this
Sure.
concept.
Sure. Sylvia.
So I have not, I don't think, met with the applicant, unless I'm completely forgetting something.
I don't think so. So we've met very, very briefly with Kelly a while back before he went on maternity leave. Congratulations, by the way. John, Mike previously, but I don't think we've had the chance
So
to meet.
probably because I'm not up to speed, I'm a little bit less comfortable. I'm kind of what Tony described as one of those who's like, what is happening? And so I just am going back to Woodmont Commons, to the Bible here, to their Bible, that is, and looking at the master plan, and I would just ask that as many of these principles, and I am, whether that's, connectivity, how will this connect to the larger picture for future development within this section? So this is the WC 12 section. Just want to see, in comparing to what was originally proposed, how will this fit in? I think I will continue that because we're going to see other proposals within Woodmont Commons, so I will constantly do the same thing. What was originally envisioned, how will this match? And how will you carry out some of the principles, whether that's, as I said, pedestrian network, bicycle network, the whole notion of work, play, live in one larger area, and just want to see that connection. Also, how that relates to the existing uses around this. And so that was also probably when they originally proposed this. There was a lot of thought there, so would just like to really understand how this relates to that master plan. Thank you.
Something very similar to what you just said is expressly called for in the master plan as we go through this process. So yeah, we are aware that we need to demonstrate overall compliance with the intent of the PUD.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Anything from the board?
I think, Mr. Chair,
Mr. Rugg?
what would be helpful to me if I had a vision from the applicant of what they want to put there and what type of business that they envision. I think you've got to be more definite than you have now for me to make any judgments here. So I think the onus is upon you to decide to elicit to us your vision for the use of this property.
Mm-hmm.
That would 100% be our next step. I mean, showing you design plans, showing you building layout, showing you the criteria that apply in the PUD, what applies in the zone. That is the next step, absolutely.
Okay, and what type of business do you envision?
Range of businesses. So
Give us the range, please.
yeah, so we just completed a 325,000 square foot warehouse in Merrimack, New Hampshire. We've had great leasing activity there, and the leasing activity has been everything from advanced manufacturing, 3D printing metal components, to a pure warehouse and logistics use. And that echoes through all of our projects in New England, really, but specifically north of Boston. So our intent is to build buildings that capture that wide net. We have no users in our back pocket. We have no way of telling you exactly which use is going to go into which building, because each building will be very thoughtfully designed to cater to all uses within an industrial zone that would be approved by that industrial zone. I can tell you there is not going to be a rock crushing operation. I can tell you that there won't be, a cement plant. These are going to be
metalworking.
yeah, no metalworking. This is going to be, either extremely sophisticated manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, light manufacturing, non-offensive uses that will generate great jobs, along with very vital warehousing and logistics operations that also will be providing a number of very strong blue-collar and white-collar jobs alike.
So how many buildings are you envisioning?
4.
4 buildings.
4 buildings, none larger than 260,000 square feet.
Okay. Now, could you send us some details, or send it to Kelly, and she can distribute to us, specifics on what you have built and the type of businesses that you tend to cater to.
Absolutely.
Give us more of a feel for what's going to happen, because without the feel, you know, I'm lost. So you're
Yeah.
gonna have to engender that feel to us so that we know what's happening.
How many employees do these businesses have on average?
So ranges, our guesstimate for this is it could be anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 employees when it's fully built out. I think it's Pettingill Road is a very solid comparison to what we are trying to develop.
Can I ask you a question?
Jason, hold on one second.
Oh, okay.
Jason.
Overall, this seems fine. My building upon what Sylvia said, and it's just over time, as we talk about each one of these pieces of Woodmont Commons, it feels like the pieces that the community most latched onto in the master plan keep getting gradually chipped away. And I want to make sure that that does not happen here. You know, that, for example, the streets talk about, you know, pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure, landscaping, and that sort of thing. I don't want to see it turned into a truck drive, you know. So my major concern with a lot of the stuff that comes before us, not just you, but just in general, what we see with Woodmont, seems to continually chip away at this, at the things that were most attractive to the community. And so I just want to express my feelings on that overall.
Yeah.
Then the other thing is, it would be nice to see something go in that is not a warehouse. Feels like 90% of the commercial development in town is a warehouse. Be nice to see something else. I realize that you have to sell what you have to sell, and you've got tenants that, you know, you don't necessarily control who, but it would be nice to see something other than just another street filled with warehouses.
Yeah.
So.
Beautiful warehouses. Beautiful.
They can be nice warehouses, but they're still warehouses.
As long as they're beautiful, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, I understood it. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Ann.
I'm concerned about, but this is just something for the future, hours of operation. Because if it's a warehouse, does it go, you know, 24/7?
Correct.
Because we have an entrance and an exit off the highway that abuts a roadway, Charlie Carr Lane on the west side of 93. So I'd be concerned about the noise that generates during the night for them, because they abut the highway right there. There's a road that parallels the highway.
On the west side of the highway.
West side
there's
of the
a
highway right
residential
there. See
neighborhood
the
that
entrance and
parallels
exit
the
ramps on the
on-ramp
other
to
side,
93
yeah.
South.
That
is what
exit
she's
and
getting at.
entrance ramp is right there. So,
I'm thinking a lot of traffic's gonna be coming off I-93, the new 4A.
What she's
I'm
saying
talking
is
about
she's
from the-
worried. Ann, let me try and help you
okay,
through
go
this.
ahead.
If you've got a warehouse, it's a 24-hour a day operation. You're going to have obviously truck traffic both on and off 93 at exit 4A. Exit 4A heading south. So if you're getting on heading south from exit 4A, that ramp is parallel with a residential neighborhood. And I think that is what Ann is concerned
Yeah,
about.
not just south, coming from the
Coming from-
north and
exactly.
then getting off that road.
Exactly.
On and on.
So I think she's pointing out her concern of 24-hour truck traffic very close to a residential neighborhood, I think is what she's getting at.
Gotcha, thank you.
Yes.
Thanks.
Anything else from the board? I'd echo a little bit about a few of the things that have been said here tonight. To Art's point, I think you guys are at 50,000 feet in the air right now. I need you to come down to like 30,000 feet and give us a little bit more of an idea of what this looks like, you know, and how what you're asking for, how it's going to fit into the neighborhood. So come down in altitude a little bit, get down to 30,000 feet, and give us a little bit more than just some writing on a paper. And I think what Art's looking for is something that we can kind of quantify,
Get into
see.
some of the detail.
you know,
of-
exactly.
Yeah.
The details of your vision.
Yeah.
That's what I
Absolutely.
want to know.
And I think we will do that in the site plan submission. And we can try and do it prior to that. I think
it would be very beneficial for you before, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Trottier. I think it would be very beneficial for you to come to the board with a solid, concrete, conceptual design of what you're trying to do before you get into a design review. Is that fair?
You are right.
Thank you. So, just real quick, this is a conceptual thing, and in there's a few different types of. This isn't a hearing. At a hearing, we have an opportunity for public comment. Where this is conceptual, it stays just between the board and the applicant. When this does come to a public hearing, you'll absolutely have the chance to discuss anything you'd like to talk when we get to that public hearing step. But right now, we're well before where it's time to be heard.
But unfortunately, some of those things might be set in stone then.
No,
Nothing's
not
set in
not
stone.
at all. And that is the point of the public hearing. So, all right, thank you. Anything else from the board?
Not at this time. I think getting that information to Kelly would be very beneficial for us.
And just to elaborate on that, so would you like to see a site plan with each waiver listed out, or not waiver, substitute standard or compliance alternative listed out prior to that site plan submission?
I think it would be very helpful for you.
Yes.
Okay. Very helpful.
But the board does understand what process we're trying to follow
Yep.
outlined in the master plan, yes.
Yep.
And I think like Jake is saying, that way you don't miss anything, John.
We're on board, and we're glad we came tonight
Metropolis is.
for multiple reasons. So this has been good feedback. Appreciate it.
Not a problem. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we've got some new plans. We've got a conceptual discussion on the development of 15 and 44 Pillsbury Road, map 10, lots 15-0 and 41-0, zoned AR1, Woodmont Commons PUD. Pillsbury Development Company, LLC, is the owner. Procopio Companies is the applicant. Good evening. The floor is yours, sir.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. My name is Will Nuccio. I'm with the Procopio Companies. We've been in front of you before for the BTR portion of it. I have my fellow Procopio colleague, Mark Procopio, right back here, and then our attorney, Laura Gandria. We were previously in front of the board over the last 2 months for 36 Pillsbury Road. That was the build-to-rent portion of it. This is the other two parcels that we're involved with. So the property here, as you can see, the large rectangle is the rental portion. The portion that we're going to talk about today, 44 and 15. 15 is just a portion of the southern. It actually incorporates most of Woodmont Commons. So we're just taking a parcel of that, which is WC6, which we'll get into in the next slide. And then, so highlighted there is WC6, and then a combination of WC8 and 7, just so everyone understands in the PUD what we're actually talking about today. The PUD does have some example visions, and essentially what they show is and we'll go through them in the next two slides, but 44 Pillsbury is a pretty traditional New England development. Relatively large frontage and relatively large lots. We can go to the next slide if you don't mind. I'll walk you through the PUD a little bit and then what our conceptual design is at this point. WC6, as it's intended, is supposed to create the residential neighborhood that is compatible to the surroundings. It is supposed to have 16 units. It's a two-way street, and it's supposed to be a neighborhood. And Kelly, if you don't mind going to the next slide. Essentially what we're doing, it's a little bit more compressed than the other one, just based on the wetlands, the setbacks from the wetlands, and we have a neighbor on the south side of the site there. The units we're trying to go up to 26 units there. We're going to keep the neighborhood as the PUD, and we'll still try to have the two-way street as it's designed. Similar to the compliance alternative that we would do for the BTR portion, we would probably try to do a country road style road there where we wouldn't have the full granite curbs and sidewalks, just because the center common would be the like the amenity space for all the houses. And then Kelly, if you don't mind on the next one. WC6 is part of the walking path, though, of the whole Woodmont Commons. So the green line there that you see in the hatch, that would come off the west side of WC6. It would essentially walk along the wetlands, and it would connect on to the rest of Woodmont Commons, and then through our BTR portion, which we have a pretty extensive walking path through there as well. Back to the PUD, WC7 would be similar. It would be a neighborhood two-way street. The intent would be that they create a residential neighborhood that is compatible to the existing properties. That's what the PUD says. And 8 is relatively similar as well, except that, sorry, give me one sec. It's supposed to have a higher density. So we're considering 7 and 8 here, similar to how we're doing in the BTR. Whether you're going to have a two-way street, you're going to have a neighborhood. That's how the PUD calls it out. And then if you go to the next slide, if you don't mind. Essentially, same thing. On the west side of the site here, it's a relatively steep slope. There's like an 8% slope there. And there's a decent little forested area there. So we would try to keep that there as such to keep a separation between Gilchrist and our property. We would be looking for 52 units here based on Mr. Chair's comment last time of potentially making a couple more units here, but only make them not 4 and 5 bedroom houses, make them something more manageable for first-time home buyers or people that are getting out of their house as it is today. So that's WCC. One thing that we're finding, and that's why we're going to do the conceptual plan today, is that for the BTR portion, we think we fit into a lot of the categories that we need. We're looking at more of a cottage court feel. There are some discrepancies in the PUD where in this portion, which is the performance spec, it says that single-family cottage court can only actually be in multifamily. If you look in the actual building types, it says that cottage court can be built in the single-family. So we would be looking most likely to go for a second compliance alternative. We're going to go for one under the rental portion. This would probably be a similar compliance alternative, separate from the larger development for just to clean up items like this and talk about the road construction that we had previously talked to John Troutier about. From a conceptual standpoint, why are we looking to increase the units a little bit and do a little bit more compact cottage court build on these two parcels? One is that the majority of the houses here, and the market from when the PUD was actually put in place 11 years ago and today is just a drastically different housing market. I think that's where the rental portion that we presented last time comes into play. But I think this also is going to be a lot more this will be a lot more 2 and 3 bedroom houses. It's not going to be the 4 and 5 bedroom houses. It's going to be a lot more attainable, and just based on the market, the smaller square footage, the less bedrooms should make it a more affordable house. We think the for sale portion will complement the for rent portion. Most of the houses in the for sale portion will be similar to the for rent portion. So anyone who comes to the area, there should be a good amount of selection whether they want to rent or they want to buy. And then with the clusters, we're able to maximize the land use, and we're able to add a community feel. So this is an example. One of the concepts that these type of clusters are popping up all around the country. This is kind of one of the first ones up in the Northeast, similar to the rental, but that is similar to how it would be, where all the houses face into the common area, and then the back of the house would actually be the street. And one more. And if you go one more. And this is another example of how the front of the house would face the common area. So it's relatively, Mr. Chair, you mentioned in the last meeting that, it'd be cool to have some of these clusters as a for sale portion. We brought that back to our office. We kicked that around. We talked to Kevin from Pillsbury Realty, and we like the idea a lot. And this is what we're thinking. So it's slightly different from the PUD as it stands today. But we think through a compliance alternative that will come formally and present that to you, but this is conceptually where we are.
Thank you. All right. I will start with town staff. Mr. Troutier.
So of those three Of those three 6, 7, and 8, you're almost proposing twice as many units that are permitted
Yeah.
from the PUD.
Yep. So we would have to go through with Pillsbury Realty and try to do an increased count for the overall PUD.
Yeah, so again, just, if you didn't notice that number, originally it's what, 50 some odd, or 48 is permitted, and they're up to, 40 is permitted, and they were requesting up to 78.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We would do, with WC8 there, WC8 allows up to 230 units. We technically, based on the whole Pillsbury Realty PUD, have 250 rentals, and then we have 50 for sale that we can do. So we would go from 50 to 78 is how we have it drawn today.
Gotcha, okay. The only other question though too is, again, just the way that some of the layout is, it doesn't seem that some of those areas where everybody's hanging out inside, just doesn't seem that it would appear that it might be a little difficult to do that with this type of layout. Just an observation, but it'll be interesting to see what you do.
Yeah, these are pretty schematic at this point.
Understood.
We're using a very good site planner, UCO.
Yeah.
So we're trying to, these were the pencil sketches, but the intent is that they would be similar to the rental portion.
Big wide felt pen.
Yeah.
Yeah, understood.
It's a little bit tougher on these as well, where you look at the house and it's actually 40 feet long, and then it doesn't look like it's much, but it's 40 to 50 feet.
Yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you, Kelly.
I don't have anything extreme, just I do like the idea, and I think it's meeting a need in town.
Thank you. Sylvia?
Sure. Just as I mentioned earlier, for every one of these different sections of the sub-areas, I look at the intent, and I'd like to see the bigger picture. Just as an example, the intent on sub-area WC8, it does say in the master plan, some retail and commercial uses will be allowed near the village center in WC and neighborhood center WC10. So just would like to see the larger picture, again, how this relates to what's existing, and that each of the components, whether it's the buffer or trail, the landscaping, and also one of the biggest aspects, I think, and a big sales point that this team came up with the last time we saw you was the agricultural component and how it relates to the apple orchard, and bringing that back to life if possible, or like to see how that might be incorporated. I know from helping this community with their master plan, the apple orchards are a huge part of their identity and very unique to this community, so would like to see how that's incorporated. So again, I'm just going to be comparing with the intent of the master plan and seeing how this group meets that. I also have, similar to John, just curious the density, how that's going to be worked out from what was originally approved to what is coming before the group now. So thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. All right, board. Do you have anything? Ann?
I'm concerned about, what is it, 15 Pillsbury, where it's below Pillsbury Road on the corner of Gilchrist and Pillsbury, because that's a bad intersection right there. I know Sugar Plum Lane has restrictions on taking a left at some times of the day, so I want you to be aware of that. And also, that area in general is a very busy three-way intersection. And I'm not sure if it's going to be improved in the future or not, but adding a lot more traffic to that area, I think is going to be tough. And I hope so. I hope I'm seeing more building coming in there with your plans. And I'm not all thrilled about that because the intersection. And the way it is a point along the way for heading north, west, south, across the town. That's an important intersection for that also. So it's not just a little neighborhood area, it's a cross crossroads across the town and north and south also. So,
Thank you, Ann. Anything else from the board? Jason?
Yeah, just, I've been a fan of what you've done. I think overall I like it. I will reiterate what I said last time. I am concerned about the seeming chipping away of the pieces of Woodmont Commons that people find attractive, including, in this case, in WC8. It does, specify small retail, neighborhood kind of thing, and that has completely gone away in this. It seems like we're getting a lot more residential and a lot less of those pieces that people were really looking forward to. So if there's a way to bring that back, that would be nice.
We'll look into it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else from the board? Mr. Rugg?
I just want to echo what Sylvia said about, I think the way this master plan was laid out, there's a lot of residential, but also it provides service for those residents. And that's like neighborhood centers, some retail, 7-Eleven store, a Dunkin' Donut, that type of stuff that people like to, visit and where people can congregate also. So you get more of a community atmosphere from it. And also what Ann has said about Pillsbury Road is a very busy road now. And I think we've got to take a hard look at that and what you're going to be adding to traffic, and probably even upgrade that road, and probably traffic lights with the intersection with Michael's Way. Because now that's a dangerous intersection along with a three-way intersection with Gilchrist and Pillsbury and Hardy.
Part of our site plan for the submission, which we're hoping to submit, will include that traffic study. That we're working with VHB and Pillsbury Realty to do the traffic study, since the last one was a couple of years ago. In order for us to get this passed, that will have to be. We walked through it with John Troutier in our team, and I think John pointed out like 20 intersections that had to be studied. So the traffic is not being taken lightly by any means.
Yeah. One of the biggest complaints we get, along with the town council, is the traffic in town. So we have to learn how to deal with it, and it's not always adding more, but it's how to create the flow and everything. And John is your person to do that, along with our traffic engineer.
Thank you. Mr. D, I saw your hand up, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For staff, please. So, John, did I hear you mention about, when you were talking about density, that because of the increase in density in 6, 7, and 8, that the entire project would have to give up density somewhere else in the project?
Again, yeah, so one thing that I didn't see though is WC8, actually, they allow up to
30.
230.
230. How the hell are they ever gonna get 230 in that small area?
So Debbie,
High rise.
if you don't mind going back to like one of the first slides where it shows all this.
20 stories.
Can you probably the third slide?
Is it New York City?
So WC8 actually is all of the blue or purple section, all the way up through the middle, and WC8. It actually doglegs out, so WC8 is actually all of that. So most of the 230 will be taken up by the rental portion.
Okay.
So that's why it's a little bit of horse trade in here, where WC8 shows 230, but since it's broken up into two phases, there's some here and some there. And to answer your other question, though, yeah. So if we increase density here, just based on our deal with Pillsbury Realty, the whole density of the whole PUD would have to go up, or we would have to go back to our 50 units that we have.
Got it. So again, for TV, question need to be asked and answered and clarified, and so that answers the density part of it. I'd also like to echo the fact of, and Sylvia had mentioned this earlier, live, work, play. I think we're getting to a point where this entire development has very little services and a lot of residences. But the initial conception was more of a self-contained neighborhood. And I don't see that right now. So something to think about, and just keep it in the back of your head, as more and more things come. I know I've mentioned it to Mr. Smith as well, and we'll see what comes out.
Right.
So thank you.
Giovanni, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, WC7, what is intended for that? It almost looks like it's supposed to be a buffer to those houses.
So it was, I think if you go to the next slide, Kelly, that was essentially the dotted line along the tree line was a 50-foot buffer, and then these were relatively large perimeter houses that were supposed to be. This is just an example, also, right? So this was just the example that was in the PUD. It's not necessarily exactly what it was, but the PUD does call a couple examples, and this is one of them where you would have essentially much larger lots with one single-family house on it.
So are you keeping that, with respect to your neighbors on Gary Drive, how are you addressing that? I mean, it's different to have larger houses there than have a high density of houses there. How are you maintaining some sort of buffer there for them?
Sure. So we will still maintain the 50-foot buffer that you see in the dash lines along right below Gary Drive. So we have to stay outside of that 50-foot buffer. If you're following what I'm saying, there's a dark hatch line, and then there's a relatively light hatch line. That's a 50-foot distance. So we still have to build outside of that.
So you're not building structures in it?
Not inside the 50, no.
Okay. And because I know a lot of the plans we've had come in to us lately has been that they want to see some sort of buffer there between the houses and the construction.
Yeah, that's one thing that we're not trying to change in either the rental or this portion of it. Most of them, even on WC6, we're trying to keep that. There's one single house on the south side of that. We're trying to keep at least a distance from that, and that carries through with our rental piece as well, where we're trying to keep distance from the neighbors.
So this is showing that portion of WC7.
Anything else from the board? Yeah?
Just real quick, which one of these are for sale and which one of these are rent? Like what areas do you envision for sale and what area?
This would all be for sale.
Is
correct?
this all for sale?
So this whole presentation is for sale. I apologize for going back and saying rental,
Okay,
but
yeah,
they
I
are
was getting-
applicable, and since
okay.
we've been in front of the board before, if you don't mind going to maybe slide 2, I think has the whole.
There you go.
Go back one more. Yeah. Everything highlighted in red will be for sale.
Okay.
And then everything pretty much all through here and this little nub here, that would all be the rental
Gotcha.
portion of it.
Okay,
Which
thank
we
you.
talked, that was from last meeting.
Yes, yeah, exactly, yeah, that was that. Yep.
Mr. Rugg?
What's the total number of dwelling units that you have proposed for this?
For the for sale portion, it's 78.
76 for sale, how many
Say
are?
78?
78
78.
78.
is what we've presented today, and then for the rental portion, it's 250.
And then how many were permitted as it stands right now?
250 rentals and then 50 for sale.
50 for sale, so you got 50 to 78. 18. 28. Yes, sir.
So, thank you. So is it 78 is your wish list on the cartoon drawing, but when you actually get into it, it may be less? Or it could be more, I guess, but, or are you pretty confident at 78?
To be candid with you, 78 was the number that came up in the last planning board session, so we kept to that number.
Okay.
If we couldn't get to 78, if the overall PUD couldn't be increased, and it's just conceptual talk, then we'd probably have to go back to the 50. And from a developer standpoint, we wouldn't know if we would just sell the lots as is, we'd subdivide and sell it. And then we wouldn't know what the characteristic was of it. It might be 4 or 5 bedroom, just based on the market and what you can build and what you can sell.
Yeah, I'm trying to, sorry to cut you off. What I'm trying to figure out is if you know for a fact, if you've done the work far enough into this, that you know you can get the 78 in there.
That we've had our site planner. They've been keeping to the 78, and that's how they got the sketches that we had today.
Thank you. All set.
Anything from board?
I just want to mention one thing.
Sure.
Around the perimeter, which is WC7, I believe, in the original plan, it was, the width of the lots there would be the same as the neighbor lots on the other side, on the boundary line. Something like, some restriction like that. Do you remember?
I don't, Dan.
Okay, yeah, that's why they're that wide. On WC7, they were supposed to be matching the property on the other side of the boundary line.
So,
All those
so the-
single-family lots.
yeah, the same width of the
Yeah,
lot
that's
on
why
Gary
they're that
Drive.
large, all the way around WC7, all the way up to where the water tank is. And
All right. Anything else from the board? So, I think there's a little bit here to discuss. Number one is density. I think that's kind of you're permitted 50 units inside of this, you're proposing 78, but in order to get to that 78, the density needs to be allowed to be increased through the PUD. Let's rewind to the last meeting that you gentlemen were here. I think you presented a very unique opportunity, something a little bit different in the town of Londonderry, and we had discussed, how can we bring this to, what can we do to make this that it's something that somebody can buy, and how do we make it affordable? And we had discussed, in order to meet that, you'd need a little bit more density, but there would be restrictions on sizes of houses. You've talked 2 or 3 bedroom. Personally, I think there's an opportunity here to create something unique that has the potential, if it's done right, to serve a group of people who need something that's a bit more affordable, right? We go back to, if you look at some of the recently approved developments in the town of Londonderry, I think I saw the starting price point of $910,000 for a single-family home in the town of Londonderry. I think 90% of the people in this room could agree that $910,000 is not affordable. So, we have to ask ourselves, what can we do to hopefully get somebody to build an affordable house, right? And the way I see of doing that, you've talked 2 or 3 bedroom. That's a very broad term. We've got $900,000 2 or 3 bedroom, 55 plus houses in this community. That's not affordable. I think that in order for me to be comfortable with the density to this, it needs to be more defined exactly what we're looking for, or what the restrictions are to the size of the housing. Theoretically, in theory, you can have a 3,000 square foot 2-bedroom house. You could also have a 1,000 square foot 2-bedroom house. I think there needs to be more, again, in order to hope that we can make it more affordable. We cannot control the market, but theoretically, statistically, a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 1,000, 1,200, 1,300 square foot house should be more affordable than a 3-bedroom, 3,000 square foot house. Is that a fair assumption?
Sure.
So, we can't control the market, but maybe we can control a little bit of what this house is going, the sizes of these houses, in hopes that we can get you to a more affordable point. And affordability is such a weird word, because people still feel as though a $300,000 house is what is a starter home and affordable. That's not real. A $500,000 house is what is considered an affordable home today. A $500,000 house is a house in Londonderry that's built in the 80s, right? So we're trying to find a way. At least that's when I saw this come up, I said, wow, we might have a way to get a price point down and create a little bit more of an affordable community for a class of people, a group of people who would love to live in Londonderry but cannot afford a $910,000 house. I think if this is done right, this has really good potential to do that. I do think that, to what some of the board has said here tonight, I do feel as though there is kind of that one missing piece of what the PUD is supposed to be, of, you know, some sort of retail establishment. You know, I think back to, or I'm thinking of old Londonderry, North Mammoth Road, Kevin, right? Look at that 20 years ago. Smaller houses there was a little convenience store there, you know, that type of thing. Something that had the ability to serve the community, but there were these, you know, the beginning of it were these smaller houses, smaller lots. You know, how do we bring that into 2024? And I realize, again, this goes more towards the density thing. I completely understand, and what a lot of people need to fully understand, is that in order to get that affordability, there needs to be a little bit more density. But why people don't understand that is because we've given more density and there's been no more affordability. So that brings in what I've discussed of what do we have to do, you know, from a board level? Is there requirements we can put on the sizes of homes in hopes that we don't have another situation of 3-bedroom, $800,000 to $900,000 houses? Mr. D.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think, Mr. Chair, builders and developers make money on a percentage. You're gonna make 10% on a house. Are you gonna build $1 million house or a $100,000 house?
Absolutely.
So I think the answer to your question, how do you get there, is that you talk to your legislators in Concord and have them get something done and give some relief to developers so that they can afford to build a house that they can make money on that's affordable for the general public. And until that comes down from Concord, and until there's some legislative relief, nothing's going to happen, because builders and developers make money on a percentage.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the answer to your question. And everybody needs to talk to their legislatures. You know, people come to the town council and they complain, what are you doing? Well, there's nothing the town council can do. There's nothing that this planning board can do as a land use board to make it affordable. We can change densities, we can change colors, we can make the road wider, we can make it smaller, whatever. But we can't make it affordable for a builder developer to build a home. That's going to come from Concord, where legislation gives tax relief or gives rebates or however it works, which is how some of the bigger developments are making a ton of money in Manchester doing affordable housing, because the state has given them some relief. Hasn't happened in Londonderry. That's my answer.
Kevin, I just thought I saw your hand going up and down there for a minute.
No, I mean, Jake, yeah, Kevin Smith representing Pillsbury Realty. I think you covered most of it. Just speaking to the density portion, that's something that I just want to make sure the board understands and realizes that's something that would have to come from you all to amend the current density allowances to increase that. Procopio is allowed to build 300. And in our agreement with them, we've split that between 250 BTR and 50 market. So anything above that would have to be an amendment to allow for the increased density for them to do that.
And I think that...
Along with density comes traffic.
I think with that, Mr. D, is what I was getting at is, to be comfortable with the density, I would want to see a smaller home.
I get it. So
guideline for them to follow.
So to Mr. Smith's point, doesn't the PUD have to show where the density is getting relieved from? So this square, that's a round thing. Okay, so this round piece of land is allowed to have an increase in density. And in order to get that, it's kind of like we do with wetlands. We're gonna take it from this round piece of land, which now is only allowed this much because that piece of land got a 10% bonus. and the
The-
owner, developer of Woodmont would need to figure that out?
Those are the current rules. If we're going to increase it in one sub area, we have to decrease it in another sub area. In this case, we're not looking to take away from another sub area to give them more, because we're
You're just looking to increase, period.
well. Just to be clear, we weren't looking to increase, and I don't believe Procopio was. It was something that came from the board in a previous meeting. The board brought it up about increasing density to get smaller homes that would hopefully be more affordable. And we said, we're open to that. I think they're open to that. I can't speak to affordability, though. That's their thing. That's what they do. So,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I think one thing that we have a great opportunity here where while we're building 250 rental units, the houses that we're going to do in this for sale portion are going to essentially be the same houses. So it's going to be anywhere from 1,200 to 2,000 square feet houses. And when you do it at that scale with most likely the same subcontractors, same contractors, that's when you start driving prices down, and that's when the overall build starts getting a lot more, I don't want to use the word affordable, but affordable.
I would think that as the chair has said, this is kind of like a density bonus. And so what I'm hearing the chair say is, as a density bonus, we'd like you to provide us more information on how you're going to provide, let's say it's 10 units, just to make life easy, 10 additional units. How will those remain affordable? How will those become affordable, and how are you going to define affordable? Are you going to say it's a percentage of the median income, so 33% of a median income in Londonderry, that would be the price point? So, and how would that remain affordable? And I think that's the challenge here that we're asking the developer. We're not asking you, we're not telling you how to do it. We're asking you, how will you do that? Because this group is saying that density, we will determine that. We will either say yay or nay, but we're asking you to make it affordable. And I think making that definition, and based on, the definition of affordable would make sense. And that's what I would be looking for. As I think on average, affordable is a home would be about something around 33% of your income. That's what it would be based on. And you can use the median income for Londonderry. That I would think that would make sense.
Certainly looking for some type of metric to at least in my eyes, be able to.
So are
be able
we
to
allowed,
justify.
are we allowed to say, Mr. Chair, are we allowed to say that, okay, we'll give you 78, but we want 25% of them to be 33% of the median income?
Well, the additional up and above those 300.
No, we're at 78.
The
We're at 78 houses.
Well, I'm
Just mixing them both together.
Oh.
I'm just taking it as one area.
the extra is 28.
So those 28 units.
So we can say you can have 28 more, but they need to be affordable.
I'm hearing the chair request that.
I think the developer's hearing exactly what the discussion is, and it's up to them to go back and figure it out.
And I guess what I'm trying to figure out, how are you guys going to define affordable? How are you going to make?
I'll let them define it and come back with a plan.
Miss Gandia?
Laurie Gandy.
Can you just come to the mic?
Microphone, please.
Laurie Gandy with Divine Millimet. As far as to answer Tony, your question, can you require that? No. Any type of workforce housing is voluntary in measure. The state statute talks about it has to be voluntary. And when communities want that, that's when they offer a density bonus. I think you're trying to do the flip of what's allowed by statute. So it has to be a voluntary measure. So it's not within the board's jurisdiction to require a developer to have any type of work for a house. And you can absolutely ask
I
it.
don't think I'm looking
No,
for
no,
workforce
right.
housing. Yeah.
Right. Well, I think that's where I think people are getting a little bit confused. I think the affordability is now being defined as workforce housing when you talk about median income
Correct.
and a percentage of that.
Correct.
So I think our discussion is getting a little bit fragmented as to what the board. I think, Jake, what you're looking for is just to have a price point of affordability for people to buy houses, not affordability based on workforce housing or median income. Is
Correct.
what I'm understanding. But I think
you're on the right page.
Right.
Page with that. Yes.
yeah, so I see the discussion just
Yeah.
getting fragmented. So I'm just
Yeah.
trying to bring us back to what you're really trying to get at.
Yeah. And I think that's what we need is how can you show us that you are going to be able to provide an affordable home based off of giving the extra density? What is it? What metric can you show us that'll say these will be more affordable?
That we can control the square footage of the houses.
Yeah. I do too.
And I think if we match the houses that we're doing on the rental portion, like what was asked of the board in the last meeting, and just based on metrics, that will bring your prices down. We're not looking to build 3,000, 4,000 square foot houses. We're looking to build, the old the old houses after
And
World War II.
I
that
understand
people can afford.
understand that, but that's that metric we're looking for because again, let's go back to some of the 55 plus communities that came to the town of Londonderry, and the whole hope and purpose of it was to be able to keep a community in Londonderry, and the exact opposite happened. It's not like everybody moved out of town, but they were not. The board thought they got it right, thought they had a way to provide an affordable home, and again, we just had more dense homes that are as expensive as my 4-bedroom house on 2 acres of land. We allowed a much more dense situation. So what was the benefit to the town of Londonderry if those houses are just as expensive as a single family home? All we did was give them density in the town of Londonderry. The people of Londonderry got nothing back because there wasn't enough of a metric to hold them to actually creating something more affordable. And I think that's what I'm trying to get at, is just common sense tells me if you limit the size of a house and you limit the amount of bedrooms in a house, it's only going to sell for so much. Again, I understand the market controls some of that, and it's going to be, at the end of the day, how desirable is it for people, right? But my thought is, if it's a smaller house and it's only got 2 or 3 bedrooms and it's a 1,200 square foot house, your price point is going to be different than if it's just a 3-bedroom house that is ultimately, it's a 3-bedroom house, but it really has 4 bedrooms, but one of them doesn't have a closet. So now it's, you jumped from, I don't know, $600,000 to $750,000 for your price point. You know what I mean? But it's still a 3-bedroom house. No, it's not. So what metric can you give us that we can at least sit there and say, yes, these are going to end up more affordable if we allow this density? That's what I'm looking for.
I'm thinking a 1-bedroom house with a 6-car garage. Just throwing that out there.
The garages are apartments, huh?
Have you seen his garage?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I think the ball's in their court.
It is, yeah.
Have them come back to us with
Absolutely.
with something a little more concretious and
Absolutely.
see what happens.
And I feel like you.
Well,
you
I
have-
also want, to talk about the traffic that's going to generate.
Oh, absolutely.
Because that area is, it wasn't envisioned for packing them and stacking them in era. It had a nice plan to it with like we were talking about before, live, work, and play. You had stores, commercial stores originally, and retail, and then housing above it. We don't see that in any portion except where it was originally started up near the Market Basket area. And they had the projects we're seeing there that you're going to be developing, they had an area in the center which had businesses in it too. And that's not being seen here. I like the plan, Woodmont put together for it. We're straying so far away from it, the whole development's coming to be residential. We don't see any of the amenities, I call amenities, stores and, retail that people use every day. And also might bring in dollars from the community. I don't see that. It's becoming a big housing development.
So, Ann, just to be clear, what's being proposed in these sub-areas are single-family homes, which is consistent with the PUD
Right.
in these sub-areas.
Right.
The PUD in these areas didn't call for retail in the bottom and
Going up
residents
the
up
middle
top.
section of, what is it, the large,
WC8? WC8 does allow for some commercial.
yeah.
If they wanted to add commercial density into that area, they're allowed to do that. We're talking about traffic. So I just want to throw that out there, that if they plop a Dunkin' Donuts in the middle of it, I mean,
Right,
it's
but-
allowed, but is that what you really want up in that area? Is a coffee shop?
But they'll be able to walk to it.
Well, and with the whole walkability of the entire development, they can easily walk from WC's 6, 7, 8 to what eventually will be more retail in WC1. So I will tell you, and I think I said this to the board in a presentation earlier this year, the retailers, the ones who are going to put their money on the line to build bricks and mortar to put retail here, they want to see rooftops. Heard it over and over and over. We don't see enough rooftops. Well, now the rooftops are coming. Wood Partners is fast and furious building. We've got Procopio coming in with their program as well. And now we're getting a lot more interest in the retail components. So I can tell you those,
Get the residents to support the retail.
and that's what they want.
Yep.
So those components, they are coming. They're mostly going to be in WCs 1 and 2, though. Again, they're not restricted to not have commercial. If that's what, I don't believe Procopio's in the business of doing commercial, but if they said, we want to throw in some kind of retail component up into this area, they could do that. But as far as consistency with these sub areas, it is consistent with that they're primarily single-family homes that were supposed to be
Right.
in these areas.
So I think for me, I think Mr. D's right. You've got a little bit more to do. I want you to come to me and say, this is how we're going to put up 78 houses that are going to be more affordable than what is traditionally being put up, and I want you to show me how you're going to justify that. And I think you guys have the ability to. I feel like you have the vision and you want to do it. To me, it seems like you're the right developer, if you will, that would want to take on this challenge of how do we present a community with a more affordable home. And I think that's what I'm looking for is, presenting something, you're showing 78, so that's 28, you're asking for 28 more units. Okay, show me how you're gonna ensure to us that these 78 units are gonna be this missing element of communities today that are just a little bit more affordable, What is that? How are you guys gonna show that to us? And as we've discussed a little bit tonight, is it through limiting square footage, that the houses are not going to be over X amount of square feet, that type of thing? I feel like you're close. I feel like you want to get there. Just a little bit more work to do to show us that, hey, if this density is granted, we are actually going to serve the residents of Londonderry, something they've been looking for, that we've tried to do with other developments, and it just hasn't happened yet,
Question for staff, please.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John, please. I seem to remember that at that three-way Pillsbury intersection, at some point, there was a chat about on a rotary at that three-way intersection. Am I imagining that, or was that an actual thing that happened, and is it still on the table, or what?
My recollection, that was one of the conceptuals that Woodmont had put together during some of the early phases of Woodmont Commons.
Got it. But that is not now in the plan that I can see.
No, it is not.
Okay,
No.
thank you.
Anything else from the board?
I think that was from the design charrette, Tony, who was talking
Okay.
about that.
I just wanted to double check.
Yeah, you're right, Tony.
Thank
Do
you.
you guys need anything else from us? Do you feel like you have what we're looking for? Or you feel like, do you need anything else from us?
No, so I think the path forward, this being conceptual, I think we probably should come back in front of you as another conceptual meeting. We can talk about the compliance alternative further, like we did for the rental portion with Attorney Gandia presenting that piece for this, and then we can also talk about in that the house types and what we would look to do there. And I think then we can hit everything we talked about tonight.
I think too, thank you. I think too, we need to, I always
You
look
can
at.
just eventually stop thanking me. I mean, you're going to talk.
After
anyway.
I talk, I at least look to make sure how bad I'm stepping on your toes. Thank you. But so, I don't know if this is possible, but I'm thinking some kind of a thumbnail cost thing, like ranges, maybe. Might not be possible, just a thought. You know, currently, a 1,200 square foot new construction home is selling for whatever.
We can try to do some market research. But based on when these turn over in 4 years, it may not hold water
Totally-
in 4 years, but
totally
it
We
was
get
understand.
there.
current
Trust me.
market
We
rate.
totally
Yeah,
get that.
Totally understand, but at least it's somewhat of a starting point.
It's a
not
way to show us that it would work.
Yeah, not a cast in stone, not a front page news thing. This is how much they're gonna cost. Just, we'll be very clear, and I promise you, I will say it 12 times, that these are not actual costs. Just to ballpark it, see where we're at. Thank you. All set, Mr. Chair.
I'm good. Anything else? I think we're good. Gentlemen,
Board.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. All right. We have other business, a Heritage Commission discussion. I'll start off here, and then I am going to defer to Mr. D a bit. The board, over the past, 6 months or so, has discussed a lot about process and as Mr. D likes to say, turning over all the stones and making sure that everything we're doing is the process that we're trying to, is our process as smooth as it should be. And through that conversation, we've discussed a lot about design review and the process of design review and the difference between design review and formal review and all that. Ultimately, we ended up starting to talk about the Heritage Commission, which brought up a million more questions, and Mike actually put together a nice document on the Heritage Commission. I think Mr. Ellis had a little bit on it to help us try to figure out what we're trying to figure out. So with that, I will defer to Mr. D, because I know he's had a little bit more discussion or his conversation has been around the Heritage Commission. So I want to defer to you and let you have the reins a little bit here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I shook the tree early on concerning the Heritage Commission, in that everything always starts from a complaint on a phone call that I received. And so I did a little digging. And after about a month of digging, I brought it to the board level here, and I challenged then Town Manager Mike Malaguti, or current Town Manager Mike Malaguti. I challenged Mike Malaguti to prove me wrong, that I could not find any verbiage in our regulations or in the state regulations that allowed the the Heritage Commission to be going about their business in the way they were going about it. Subsequent to that, Mr. Ellis wrote a letter, and I don't know if it was consequential or not. His is dated August 12th, his letter. And it's addressed to Mike Malaguti, and I'm going to read it because it is a public record. It's in our packet. And it says, Mike, as you know, I've been involved in several situations that involve historical resources within the town. That has brought me in contact with others that share my interests. Some of those others are town employees or members of boards or commissions within the town. While some of what I present below is based on hearsay, I believe that you will find it has merit and is worthy of consideration. Fundamentally, I believe there is weaknesses in the understanding of the responsibilities of some of these bodies, and also in the communication protocols between them. I apologize that the following is a little bit long. I have tried to keep it concise, but because it spans multiple responsibilities, it requires an explanation. So Mike took the information that Mr. Ellis presented, and he did his own research, because that's what he does, and he's very good at it. And he presented a paper on October 5th, addressed to the planning board, which says, you ask for guidance on jurisdiction and function of the Londonderry Heritage Commission. The town's administrative code establishes a historic district/heritage commission, but the purpose of both is defined not in the administrative code, but by state law. What he means by that is it's not in our codes. It's not in our rules and regulations. But it is defined in state law, which says, and this is RSA 674-44, a heritage commission may be established for the proper recognition, use, and protection of resources, tangible or intangible, primarily man-made, that are valued for their historic culture, aesthetic, or community significance within their natural, built, or cultural contexts. A heritage commission has advisory and review authority to do the following. So this is the state statute. They have advisory and review authority to do the following. Survey and inventory all cultural resources, conduct research and publish findings, including reports to establish the legal basis for a district and preparation of historic district ordinances within the municipality. That's 675-6. Assist the planning board as requested in the development and review of those sections of the master plan which address cultural and historic resources. Advise upon request local agencies and other local boards in their review of requests on matters affecting or potentially affecting cultural and historic resources. Coordinate activities with appropriate service organizations and nonprofit groups. Publicize its activities. Hire consultants and contractors as needed. Receive gifts of money and property, both real and personal, in the name of the city or town, subject to the approval of the city council and a city or the board of selectmen in the town. Such gifts to be managed or controlled by the commission for its proper purposes. And finally, hold meetings and hearings necessary to carry out its duties. In addition, 674-44B, it says the Heritage Commission also reviews and comments upon the disturbance of any stone wall which was made for the purpose of marking the boundary of or borders any road in the town of Londonderry. I want to say that again because it's an important distinction that's probably one of the most misunderstood parts of what the Heritage Commission has been doing. RSA 674-44B. The Heritage Commission also reviews and comments upon the disturbance of any stone wall which was made for the purpose of marking the boundary of or borders any road in the town of Londonderry. It does not mention subdividing a property, back property line, side property line. It doesn't say anything about that. Only a stone wall, which for the purpose of marking the boundary of or borders any road. So now we get into the historical part. No pun intended. Historically, the Heritage Commission, I'm still reading Mike's letter, has reviewed and commented upon all site plan and subdivision applications as the Heritage Commission is listed as a participant in the Design Review Committee, DRC, under SPR 202 and SPR 202F. However,
Can you just clarify, that's our site plan regulations?
yes, thank you. Everybody good on that? Okay, so, however, this provision makes, and it's in quotes, a representative of the listed boards and departments, a participant in the DRC, a representative of, indicating that the historic involvement of the full Heritage Commission in reviewing and commenting upon most site plan applications is inconsistent with the plain language of the site plan and subdivision regulations. It should be noted that the Heritage Commission bylaws conflict with the site plan and subdivision regulations, requiring that all applications for subdivision and site plan design review shall be reviewed in an advisory capacity by the Heritage Commission with recommendations made to the Planning Board. Again, this is Mike's letter. I conclude the Planning Board's site plan and subdivision regulations and its statutory purview over the land development process control, as there is no independent statutory basis for Heritage Commission review of subdivision and site plan applications. He continues, a historic district commission has binding, direct purview over the administration of a historic district, if a town has one. Londonderry's historic district comprises 5 properties: 2 Litchfield Road, the Grange, the Town Common, the Kent Allen Town Forest, and the Morrison House / Historical Society property. Again, this is Mike talking in his letter. As I understand it, the focus of your request was the Heritage Commission's role in the land development process. Therefore, I will not elaborate upon the role and function of the Historic District Commission unless you so request. And we did not at that time, Mr. Chair, do that. In closing, again, this is Mike's letter. I applaud the Planning Board's request to evaluate whether the Heritage Commission's activities have undergone mission creep, in quotes, through no fault of anyone, but rather attributable to the passage of time and the commitment of town volunteers to preserving the character of our community. It appears there has been mission creep. It is not the case that the Planning Board cannot revise its regulations to give the full Heritage Commission a place in the DRC process if it wishes, but that is not how the regulations are currently written. I want to say that again. This is Mike talking. That is not how the regulations are currently written. Finally, Mike says, I echo Dr. Ellis's recent letter, which suggests the Heritage Commission should return to its core area of focus: identification, monitoring, and preservation of historic resources. Again, Mike says, I suggest these changes will assist in streamlining the land development process and enhancing our community's focus on historic preservation. So he pretty much echoed, Mike did in his letter, the fact that he too could not find anything in our regulations that allowed the Heritage Commission to be doing what they are currently doing. The question is to the board, what do you want to do? Because if my opinion is, as a Judge Judy trained attorney, 4 o'clock every night, snacks, is that if in fact that Heritage Commission is going to continue to work in its current capacity, then it needs to be codified, written down
In our regulations.
in our regs. Okay? So my thing here is that there's a bunch going on. For sure, there's mission creep. How that happened, it doesn't matter. It happened. This is what they're currently doing. There's a lot of misinformation that I think is rebutted by Mike's letter to say, actually, there is nothing in writing, and this is all the state statutes allow. Got a bunch of different things you can do. You can leave it the way it is and say, yeah, whatever. You can pare it down to the RSA, which is in the letter, or anything in between. One of my biggest personal complaints for a decade or so, which involved many different board members of that Heritage Commission, was that in the RSAs, it says that the Heritage Commission will advise the planning board. Okay? What they're currently doing is they're advising the applicant, which is contrary to what the RSA says, with no documentation from our regulations say they can do that. And there have been several occasions which I bristled at, one in particular where the applicant changed their plan and took out 2 parking spaces because the Heritage Commission asked them to. Not sure what the Heritage Commission has to do with parking spaces, but that was before, remember, because of the way the system is set up here, they see the plan, Heritage Commission sees the plan first, so you have an applicant that changed the plan before we ever saw it. Because they advised the applicant, not the planning board. So we could say, keep doing what you're doing, but do it more like the Conservation Commission does it. The Conservation Commission hears a project. If you ever watched them on TV, it's really good TV. And they talk to the applicant a little bit, and then they make some notes, and then in our packet, we get the notes. If the Heritage Commission did that, acting almost more like the ZBA, so the ZBA hears a case, and then they say to the applicant, okay, you're dismissed. And then they deliberate, and then they make a decision. If the Heritage Commission did that, wrote down their notes on a piece of paper, we get it. Now the applicant comes to us, and we have in front of us in our packets, in our little computers down here, which which has notes from the Heritage Commission that says, you know what, we would like this, we would like this, we would like these 10 things. That's advising us, not the applicant. Am I making sense about that distinction? Okay, because I think it's really important. And that said, that takes pressure off of the applicant who is trying to figure out what should I do, because on the 2 parking spaces, that applicant was already short parking spaces. I said, put them back. And the applicant said, the Heritage Commission said, take them out. Because they thought that it was, don't hold me to this, but I'm pretty sure it was because they were too close to the intersection or something. Whatever it was, that really doesn't matter. But that's not right. One person's opinion. Okay? So I think in many cases we've had industrial buildings up at the airport where pretty much every applicant needs to go to Conservation Commission because it's Londonderry. Pretty much everything we have has a frog on it or has a puddle. Almost everyone.
Flaming's turtle.
Whatever. I like frogs better than turtles, and bunnies. So that kind of makes sense. But why we're dragging the applicant through an additional step to go to Heritage Commission on a 200,000 square foot high cube building in an industrial zone, not commercial, industrial zone, and people need to make the distinction between industrial and commercial. Most people don't. It makes me crazy. And I think it lengthens the process, and I think it's an undue burden on the applicant for no reason at all. So that's as much as I can drill down on it, and I'd love to hear your comments. I'd love to see how far off base I am. I'd like to see how far on base I am, and see what you think. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Not a problem. Anything from the board?
Historically, it wasn't, the Heritage Commission was involved, but mostly with what was on the plan and everything. And then the planner handled, any communication with the developer. But there are some developers who want to come in to talk to the Heritage Commission, some of it because questions that were asked and everything. So it kind of started from there, but I think that's where some of the creep has gotten in. So I think it's probably best for our planner and Kelly to take a look at what we can do to modify, because I think the Heritage Commission performs a useful function. And I know there are times that we negotiated with developers on design, and a lot of them, developers like the input of into the design of it also. But I mean, it's not, it's very much a communication between the 2 parties and coming to an agreement. There's not, the commission's not telling the planning board. That information does get passed along to the planning board. But
Can I just in response to that, I think from the developer's standpoint, that's challenging because of the way our process is right now, meaning, as Tony pointed out, they go to Heritage first. And so they're getting these comments about roof pitch and color and all of these elements that come with a cost. And they're wanting to make those adjustments before they come to the planning board formally, so that they're not coming to the planning board
To get continued.
3 times. You follow what I'm saying? So I think this board needs to kind of drill down on that question about order in which this is happening, and then think about how potentially waiting until the planning board level to look at those heritage comments could impact an applicant.
There's one part we're missing in here. There's clearly a scope laid out on what properties go in front of the Heritage Commission, and I think we've gotten away from that, and that narrows this down into what's really pertinent to go in front of them as a board. And when we start sectioning that out, we're going to clean a lot of this up.
I agree with that.
And I think that, to your point, that addresses what I just brought up, meaning you're not gonna see a whole list of comments about whatever, if you're not sending everything to them. So that wouldn't be an issue.
I think, maybe that's what needs a little bit more definition, or again, back to how we got here, is because we're trying to clean up our process and make everything a little bit more understandable. I feel as though the Heritage Commission serves a very big purpose in terms of the architectural aspects of a building. I also agree that it is, according to regulations and everything, I agree that it is a mission creep. It is outside of it's almost outside of their purview, if you will. But I think it plays, I think there is an important role to it. So, we as a board need to figure out, I guess, to me, there's more than just the Heritage Commission. This for me goes back to our entire process. Do we need more of a technical review committee that has somebody to speak on it about architecture? Is the DRC a little bit more defined than just this board, a representative from. So I think there's a deeper conversation there. I don't think I necessarily have an answer right now, because I agree the Heritage Commission is outside of its scope. It's clearly shown to us through the pertinent RSAs and what our very own regulations say for the committee. So the question to me is how do we redefine it to make sure that we're getting everything we need out of the process? I agree, Mr. D, that it's confusing. The whole thing is very confusing. But I also feel as though if we did not have the buffer of the Heritage Commission, we're going to see a lot more things on a planning board level that end up being continued, or there's more, we already have meetings that go till midnight. Now they're going to all be going till 2 a.m. because we're going to be talking about architecture. So how do we clean that up? And that goes into why I think there's a bigger conversation there of a technical review committee and not just the way the DRC is set up. Because again, I agree that, it is, according to all this, we're way outside of what your purpose is. Yeah, give me a minute. We're way outside of what your purpose is, but I also feel as though you're providing a much needed purpose. So how do we redefine that?
For the record, as do I, Mr. Chair.
No, I know you do. I know. We've had this conversation. So I'm asking myself is how do we redefine that to narrow is the wrong word, but the right word, to narrow in the focus of the commission to help meet what we're trying to accomplish.
There is if you remember the PUD, the Village on Technology Hill, they added a bus stop because that was a request, and so that costs money.
The Heritage Commission requested a bus stop.
Exactly, and I mean,
that's a problem.
I guess that's what to me is like. Again, how do we more clarify the purview? You know what I mean, Chris? I know you had a question, or if you wanted to come up. Yeah, absolutely.
Can I have a moment, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
Chris Kenny, 177 High Range Road, also the chair of the Heritage Commission. I would love to address a whole bunch of comments that have been made in the last half hour or so that I feel are incorrect. Starting with what the Heritage Commission is. There have been some comments about the fact that we are a historic district commission, which is true. However, we are actually a combined heritage and historic district commission, two different roles. Mr. DeFrancesco, you had mentioned earlier the powers and duties retained in NHRSA 674-44B. I noticed you read out items A, B, C, and E, but skipped over D, which is provide the planning board with input and recommendations on all subdivision and site plan design review applications.
For the record, I read the town manager's letter.
Okay, understood. So what I'm currently reading is the Heritage Historic Commission, Town of Londonderry, New Hampshire Rules of Procedure. Within those rules of procedure, under section 6, applications for subdivision and site plan review, again, all applications for subdivision and site plan design review shall be reviewed in an advisory capacity by the Heritage Commission with recommendations made to the planning board. As part of its review, considerable attention shall be given to the following: historic buildings and structures, stone walls, other historic resources, signage, site design and landscaping, architectural design, lighting, street naming, and development naming. Clearly, more than simply protecting churches and rock walls.
Can I address that, Mr. Chair? So the important point there, sir, was advise the planning board.
Sure.
And that's where the problem for me, one person, started. Because your board was not advising the planning board, you were advising the applicant before the planning board ever saw the plan. And that, sir, is a problem for both us as a board and for the applicant, because it's confusing to both parties. Which is why I said that's one of the options.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for this board to make a decision, to decide what does, because you're an advisory board to the planning board makes a decision on how much you're going to help or not, along with town staff. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's where we're at. We're trying to figure out where does this go, you know? And there was two things that happened that kind of snowballed the whole thing, that got Mike involved, who wrote the letter. Somehow Mr. Ellis wrote a letter that concurred with that, and here we are. And the board is bringing this out in the open to see what can we do that's the best for all, to protect the town, to service the applicant appropriately, who, by the way, and I say it all the time, is also a taxpayer and many times a resident of the town, and they have rights too. And so that's why we're here.
And I think another scope that we've got to stay within is the legal purview of what we're allowed to do. Let's say we get a recommendation from the Heritage Commission that we would like a water fountain in the middle of. Does that fit the legal regulations? Are we required to say, hey, Mr. Developer, we need to have a water fountain here? And that's a little confusing to them too, because that's not, to my understanding, a quasi-legal board as this is. So when they get to hear we've got to follow and go into the regulations, they might have made changes that don't. And I think that's an important thing we've got to use to define what this scope is what is legal, what are we required to ask or not ask of them, and keep that within that scale and scope.
Yeah, which I believe is why it was written that
advise.
That commission, the Heritage Commission, would advise the planning board, not the applicant. And that's, I think it's a subtle distinction, but it's really, really important.
Yeah.
To your point, for legal reasons as well.
Because if something goes wrong at that level, all of a sudden that can result in some negative consequences for all of us.
So it's my understanding that the reason that applicants were sent to the Heritage Board before the Planning Board was to streamline the process, not to complicate the process. The idea being that the Heritage Commission could give them some pointers on how to get a design that the Planning Board would appreciate and put through faster. As you said, Without that, you're dealing with all of those issues here. I understand the issue of the parking spaces. I'm not sure exactly when that happened or on what project. There was some discussion about a bus stop, but I contest the point that we requested the bus stop. One of our members said that because there was a bus stop nearby, it would be nice to have a bus stop. And the applicant actually said they were not only willing to do that, but had already planned to do something like that and just hadn't come up with the design yet. So at the following meeting, they came, they had a design, 2 designs actually, one of which we thought was very nice and we chose it. We didn't mandate a bus stop. That's actually from our meeting minutes. My point is, I don't think it's very common that we ask for things that are not within our legal purview.
Okay.
I would say you've come up with 2 instances, one of which may actually be accurate.
Well, I think it's, am I okay?
Yeah, you're good.
Thank you. I think it's from you who sits on this side and the applicant is on that side, or even if you're in one of the side rooms, whatever. If the Heritage Commission suggests something, there's a good chance somebody's going to do it if they're smart, if they know how to play the game, if they've been around, because a lot of these developers and some of these landowners that own land in Londonderry also own land in other towns and whatever, and they learn how to play the game. And so the suggestion itself, while it's not a mandate, I think you have to agree that the developer's probably going to do it if one of the members says that. So. But I would say, but I would say, and I'm going to tell you this to your face because that's what I do. I think as the chairperson that when that discussion came up about the bus stop, there should have been a discussion about, well, you know, that's really close to crossing the line to what we should be talking about. So we're going to strike that from the minutes because that's what a chair should do, you know, and I'm telling you that in person because I've said it to our chair to say the chair of that committee should have stopped that discussion because it's beyond their purview. So, you know, listen, we're all volunteers. We're all trying to get to the same place. You know, some of us are trying to get there with a bicycle, some of us are trying to get there with a motorcycle, some of us are trying to get there with a sports car, Jake. So
Sports car do I have?
And so it's a 4-wheel drive one.
The thing my kid drives on, and it's got a 24-volt battery.
So you understand my point? Seriously, we're all volunteers. We're all trying to do the right thing. I've been here 46 years. I have a lot of institutional knowledge. But I'm wrong a lot also. I make a lot of mistakes also. I put my foot in my mouth all the time. It's what I do. And in you know, in this case, I'm trying to correct what I see is a wrong, because when I see a wrong, I go after it. And that said, I think there's a way to make it work. I think there's a way to make it the best of all worlds for all concerned. But we needed to have this discussion. As you know, we're not allowed to talk to each other because we're quasi-judicial, not dissimilar to the town council. So the only way we can do it, we can't even call each other and talk about the cases. That's not allowed. We can only do it in a public meeting when it's been noticed. And so that's really kind of what we're doing today. We're having a discussion. We have Mike's letter. We have Dr. Ellis's letter. Here's what we got. What do you want to do?
I think, Tony, to your point, it's sometimes use of language, while it's subtle, gives people impressions, because I know I hear all the time, this plan was approved by the Heritage Commission, when it's a recommendation. And even a little slip up of that carries over into the community, and we start getting this scope creep where people misunderstand, even if you're fully aware of what it is and what the scale and scope is.
Sure.
Mr. Rudd.
And even this board has to be careful of what it says to a developer when a developer comes in, like asking for things. Be interpreted by the developer as, oh, I won't get the plan passed unless, they agree with the planning board. So that's what we have to be careful of also. So, I mean, we're in the same problem. And there's a lot of give and take, but we can't get to the point of negotiation. That would have to go to staff. But at least I think, I'm sure staff gets the plans out right away when they come in, don't they?
For the DRC process?
Yeah, so that when the, Heritage Commission meets, they have the plans that are for them to comment on and everything.
I wonder if.
So can they come in earlier and look at them?
Sylvia?
Okay.
I'm just wondering if it would be helpful for whether it's this group that wears two hats, the Historic District and the Heritage Commission or Conservation Commission, for the board at a working session to review the criteria of what they're hoping that these volunteer boards review, because I know that, for example, the lookbook is a really important aspect in the town. It came up in the master plan survey, and how a lot of the agricultural and historic aspects of the town were highly prevalent in that survey, where we had 1,400 people respond to the survey. And so I think if that criteria is reviewed and we can update it, I don't know when the last time the criteria has really been looked at, I think it would make a lot of sense, as well as for a Conservation Commission. Thank you.
Jason?
I don't know if you remember, I was on the Heritage Commission a
I
couple
do.
years ago, yeah. I think what the Heritage Commission does is really important. I know, like Jake said, if we had to review colors and shingles and stuff like that, we would be here until 2 o'clock twice a month, every month. So I think it's important that the commission continues to review stuff that comes in. I do think that it leads to a bit of confusion when the recommendations go straight to the applicant, because they're always going to play it safe and be like, all right, I'm gonna put that in because I don't want to take a chance on them coming to us and us going, well, the Heritage Commission suggested something, why didn't you do it? So they're always going to. So, you guys essentially get the first pass at all of their designs. So I think from my perspective, I think the process kind of works well of having it go to you, but I think maybe the recommendations then come to us, and then similar to what conservation does, and then we take it from there. We take your recommendations as we do with conservation, and 95% of the time go, yep, that looks great.
Yeah, and so, and to that point, you had one recently. I can't talk about what case it was, but it was, because we're not allowed to. But it had to do with a building in an industrial zone that had a shingle roof, and had a standing seam roof, and you all said, we want asphalt shingles on it. So it got to us, and I looked at it, and I said, wait a minute, this is surrounded by industrial buildings with either flat roofs or metal standing seam roofs, and now we get this one building with shingles on it. I wanted to say, put it back to standing seam. Why did you do that?
Was this a gas station, perchance?
I can't talk about the case.
Okay.
The answer is no.
Okay.
So the point is, you are advising the applicants, and you're supposed to be advising the planning board. That's clear. There's nothing that can counter that point, and that is a problem. And somehow we've got to at least
We
fix
gotta figure out how
at least fix that part of it. Whether or not they're reviewing every case or not, in my opinion, is up to staff. But, and then, I mean, there's a couple other things that need to be discussed, but
Yeah, and then it also begs the question is, what is it the developer asks the question? What does the Heritage Commission think? But what do you do then?
what's it, say it again, please?
So if the developer asks the Heritage Commission, what do you think, for design?
Well, that's why if when I become king, the way I would structure it would be like the ZBA does it. They come in with their plans. They show all the plans. The applicant leaves. The commission says, "Okay, thank you very much. Great presentation." Leaves. The Heritage
And
Commission
deliberates
deliberates and says, "Well, I don't want a standing seam roof. I want asphalt shingles. Okay, they got a green building. I like the blue hues of blue better. I like lookbook number 7 for a style better than what they have." And then we get the notes in the packet like we do with the Conservation Commission. So, and I think that will stop a lot of the confusion as well, and will allow us to actually make the decisions. And to be clear, we are the decision-making body out of the 3 of them, out of the 2 of them, Conservation Commission and Heritage Commission. The decision makers are here. They are advisory. And I agree, important function, no question about it.
So if you were to get our notes, would you receive them ahead of time, review them, and then supply them to the applicant before they come again? Or are you going to tell them this at the next planning board meeting and then wait for another planning board meeting in order to review their final submission?
I personally wouldn't, but I think staff might have a different opinion.
The way our current process is, it would take them being before you at a hearing to get direction from you,
Correct.
from this board.
Correct.
I feel like that only drags out the process longer, in my opinion.
Which was my point before about the applicant is really looking to solidify their plan
By the time they get
by
to
the time they get here.
which
and
is why they want the feedback.
Yeah, and I think that the criteria or the items that are currently being commented on by Heritage are items that can come with significant cost and potential changes to a plan. And so an applicant it's going to be challenging to come here, hear some of that feedback, and then have significant changes to their plan.
So what would your suggestion be?
So I think this board might want to consider defining what you want
Is
from the
reviewing.
Heritage Commission.
Yeah. Like
Specifically.
to me, the Heritage Commission, the way I've always seen it, is their purview should be strictly architectural and landscaping, right? So to your parking lot theory, it's not architectural, it's not related to landscaping, so it's really outside of what would be the purview or what they're looking at. I want their opinion on how a building looks. And I do want them to, to me, I do want the applicant to hear that feedback because I think it serves as a buffer to the planning board. To me, it's almost, we got to kind of
narrow the focus.
I don't think,
Well, I think that's what
for me, I don't think subdividing one lot into 10 lots, to me, that's not something that should go to the Heritage Commission because there's no architect, it's a subdivision.
So
you know what I
You're
mean?
not seeking that
let's-
input from.
Unless there's a rock wall along the
Unless
road.
there's a historic
So
wall.
that's
yeah,
where
We have language already to address that. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm saying
is
you might
already
need
there.
additional
there's-
language
Yes.
for the other stuff that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Yes.
To me, so Sylvia said something to me that was that was profound probably 3 or 4 meetings ago, when she said, this is the New Hampshire Planning and Land Use Regulation book that we follow. This is the Bible. She said, if you follow the RSAs, you're never going to be wrong. Remember saying that, Sylvia?
I did.
Yeah. So, and that stuck with me because I can remember things once in a while. And so, how do we get past the part where it specifically says in the RSA that they will advise the planning board?
I think.
They have to get that advice somehow, or at least information.
I got Giovanni first, but come on up. Giovanni.
Just want to clarify something. You said landscaping.
Yeah.
How do you think that's historical?
I don't at all. Nor do I think that.
You just said.
Yeah.
That you
Nor
think
do
they
I think.
comment on landscaping.
Correct.
and-
Because as I've said, I think that me personally, I think the Heritage Commission serves more than what is outlined in our RSA, which is historical. I think they're more of a, to me, the Heritage Commission is more of like a
Aesthetic.
Community,
an architect, an aesthetic
culture.
commission. Thank you. To me, they're an aesthetic commission,
Well,
not
that
a heritage commission.
It's a-
Because
the thing-
back to the RSA, let's be honest, back to the RSA, it says the Heritage Commission has purview over like 2 properties in town. Five.
It's both aesthetic and cultural.
I disagree with that. I think they do serve an aesthetic, and I understand it's past their purview of the RSA, but I feel as though they
I mean,
hold
I know it's almost,
some
you
purview
know, a
there.
joke that you have to have a purple lilac in front of your building,
Yeah.
or an apple tree in the front yard or something like that. I can see where that's, but I don't want to get into, they become landscape architect reviews on
Yep.
the proposed.
Jake's the landscape
because-
architect.
Because there is standards for landscaping in front of the property.
correct.
And I think it's wrong to start saying that, hey, I just followed all the standards that the town has in place for the landscaping, and then all of a sudden we're redesigning landscape at the historical commission.
And we've
So I
had
just wanna
we've
take
had that conversation of, do we need to, this is brought up time and time again, do we need to have more specific standards about how something looks? Because I'm confident that if we didn't have a Heritage Commission, we would have a lot of buildings in town that would look much different than what is presented today.
You don't think the planning board has eyes?
No, I do. I do.
No, I mean, I'm
It's
a
gotta
kidder,
use 'em, though.
but I mean, so if the Heritage Commission didn't do it,
Mm-hmm.
what you just said was, this board
We'll end up doing it.
would things would look different. You said things would look different, so that means this board would accept whatever came in.
I don't necessarily think this board would
there's
accept everything that
landscaping
came in.
Because
In our planning regulations.
Yeah, how would
Well,
all,
that's my point.
how it all
No,
started?
That's
That's
what
my
I'm trying
point.
to
We're
make. I
saying-
don't
we're
think you
saying the
need
same
to
thing.
have another.
Tony, how it all started was many years ago, when the Heritage Commission was formed, there's a year or two that the planning board passed along this to the Heritage Commission, because the planning board didn't have time to do it. As we would get mired down in, design and materials and so forth. So that's how,
So that's the
I
history
guess
of
what
the
I'm
mission
getting at
creep.
is if we don't have that buffer, then we are now going to have the stuff that comes to the Heritage Commission. And then
I don't have a
we're
problem
gonna
with that
see-
though, because we're so codified now, and there's so much in our regulations now that we didn't have 40 years ago. All right, 20 years ago. All right, I'll give you 20 years. But we didn't.
But I mean,
but we didn't have those things then, and now we have them. And so by the time the applicant has gone through all that and has looked at it, they're pretty close. Put some columns up. Make it. I mean, you heard me with the belly boards on several of the.
Yeah, if you think about it, we still do that.
We're still doing it.
It's just
No, I don't
We're still
disagree.
doing colors. We're
I
still
just,
doing roof pitch. We're still doing asphalt shingles or barrel tiles. We're still doing all those
It's
things.
in our
You're
regulations.
still doing trees.
I don't disagree. I'm just,
as
I
long-
think it's danger. All I am saying is I think it's a bad idea to not have something there, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying.
I know you're not. Yeah. We're all up here just saying.
So what do we want, to do?
Maybe we
What about
tightly
John
do it
speak?
like the ZBA does. I mean, you can go down the regulations. They have their 5 questions they ask every single time. Maybe we have the, does it comply with this? Does it comply with this? Does it comply with this? And we can go down the line. It's very clear. They're not going to color outside the lines in that approach, and we still get what we need from you.
Exactly.
Or for
A
you,
set
sorry.
of criteria.
For me,
Yeah.
for us.
Based on the
Yeah.
RSA.
Sorry.
That's a great idea.
Yes, for us.
Because the sheet they have this criteria on that also. So,
Have we ever seen that sheet?
yes,
It's not in our packet.
it used to be in it.
You mean the DRC sheet?
No, the comments from the Heritage Commission on their sheet,
Yeah, on the,
yeah, for the DRC.
they're not, but this goes back to the original issue, is we don't have a regulation for that, and so I think we need to establish what this board specifically wants from the Heritage Commission.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's your criteria, and now we're narrowing scope, and we're to a point where when the Heritage Commission is providing their comments, they're specific and they're what this board wants because they're advising you.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as order of operations, when you get those comments, I think that's the second part to it. But I think we need to establish criteria and what we're trying to do, and then talk about that.
So how do we get around the part where the front page of the local newspapers and sometimes the regional and the state newspaper says that a plan has been approved when we haven't even seen it yet? Because
We don't.
because
There's no regulation on
all
that.
of our meetings are televised now and certain people are watching, and what do we do about that? Nothing?
I don't know if I can solve the world's problems, Tony.
Oh, come on. You had 3 months to think about this stuff.
Yes, sir.
No, I think she was busy.
John Mahan, 26 King Arthur, and on Heritage. A couple of ideas. One is, I think you might want to consider, and something we could do easily, is advising applicants when they come before Heritage that we are reminding them that we're an advisory committee. But one of the interesting things I've noticed in my relatively short time on this committee is that there's a discussion that goes back and forth between the applicant and the committee. And while I think, Tony, there's some value in what you're saying in terms of they want to act on some of the things that we suggest to them, there's also periodically, I'd say fairly frequently, some pushback where they say, we can't do that. Doesn't fit with our vision of that property or something. And I think for the most part, with a few exceptions, and I can think of a couple, we're somewhat accepting of that when that comes back to us. That we understand what that is, and we also understand that we are advisory on those kinds of issues. So I think a reminder, sort of like the police reminding you when they pull you over of what your rights are, we could remind these applicants that we are an advisory committee beforehand. I think it would be, you want to be very careful, I suggest, in narrowing the scope of an advisory committee. Because things, and I know you hate the bus stop, okay? I hear it. That you hate the bus stop. But where the bus stop came from is folks looking at the buildings that were being built at that project, not having garages, having heard a long discussion from the applicant about the buses pulling in and going around the rotary there, and where do the kids stand on a rainy day? That's where that whole discussion came from, okay? As opposed to in all our single-family neighborhoods where the kids huddle together in the garage that's closest to where the bus is going to stop when it's raining outside or when it's snowing. So that's where it is. I don't think you want to foreclose those, but I agree. We have to let the applicant know that we're spitballing with you here because the decision makers are those guys that are going to get this down the road. I think the worst thing that you can do is have us not say anything back to the applicant. Is have them come before, do presentation, the 5 steps, okay, whatever you, and not give them feedback back. I think that is the absolute worst thing that you can do, because they're going to come back in here and Tony's going to ambush them with the need to put an asphalt roof on that thing that's in our notes that they've never seen. Okay, and I don't think that works. So I guess my 3 recommendations would be, don't narrow the scope too much, because I think you miss a little bit of keeping in mind we're volunteers, and I'll certainly speak for myself, much less in tune with buildings, et cetera, before I came into this committee than I am today, but still a relative novice. So I would say that we speak a little bit with the voice of the people, and certainly as a member of the master committee, we've heard a lot about we want to preserve the historic look of our town, and I think the Heritage Committee does a hell of a job doing that now. So my first recommendation is don't narrow the scope too much, because we can, as long as we remind that applicant that we're advisory, we can give them good guidance on what the town wants, because we're all part of the town. Not that you're not, but maybe we're not as bound up as you guys in your roles. Second thing would be make us do that little warning at the front end of the meeting. I don't think there's any problem reminding the applicant of that. And the last thing I've forgotten, because I've talked way too so long.
Well, I appreciate your comments, sir. I do.
Sir?
Because it's a sir. Yeah, we're all sirs. But I think that the the fact is that we all sit in our own little.
The look on Ann's face when you just went, we're all sirs.
I'm over here.
Whatever. I can't see you. There's somebody in my way. So I appreciate your comments, and it's important to hear that from members as well. Things from members as well. So I appreciate your comments.
I do like a little bit of what Sean had to say. Yeah, again, it's specifying a little bit more of, do we standardize the things that the commission asks, or what does that look like? I did like what he had to say there.
And I didn't mean that in a way where you can't talk back to the applicant.
Yeah, no.
In that sort of way. I just meant it just to keep it down a certain track, because there's questions maybe so you don't forget not to ask certain things, because there's certain things that we may be looking for where, regulatorily, because if the goal is to take some things off our plate when they get here, if we know common things that we're going to look for anyway, and it fits within that purview, then it's a reminder to ask those. So not to limit, but to guide to make sure we get what we need out of it. Does that make sense?
And that was my point, was
Yeah.
what we've been saying. They're advising you.
Yeah.
So what do you want from them?
Mm-hmm.
That should be the goal.
I brought up the bus stop, and I think it's a great idea. Like, I mean, when I saw it on the plans, I was like, oh, it's a great idea. I was surprised it came from you guys and not from the.
We've been talking about bus stops since Mountain Home Estates back in 1977 or 78.
Bus stop down Gilchrist for the.
And that one, but that one was later. I think one of the first ones was at Mountain Home Estates. Mountain Home, the condos at. Is that what it is? Mountain Home Estates. Anyway.
I've never seen an applicant who was more excited by an idea than those guys were about that bus stop.
Yeah,
It's a great idea. It's perfect. Yeah.
It's I'm not disagreeing that it's a good idea. I think it's beyond your purview.
I'm going to make you leave your hand.
There's no question. It's beyond your purview.
He's just waving to the people at home. You got me too.
I've got Giovanni first. I've got Giovanni first.
I think actually Art raised his hand first.
I know, but I want him to keep his in the air.
You like his deodorant?
I would gladly defer to the senior member. But I will say that I do think that, Sean, I like your thought that we should probably define what the scope is.
Yeah, define the
I
scope.
do like that you tell them it's an advisory ahead of time. I do think it's important for you to be able to have that conversation with the applicant, because I do agree with you where, if they don't get that until they're standing right in front of here, sitting in front of us, and they have to have a major design change on their plan that they weren't advised about, and we kind of slap them with it, it costs a lot of money. So I just think it needs to be within scope.
Can I just add just to that sort of, if you define.
Yeah, let's just
criteria,
define the
We
scope.
can also let the applicant know in advance. Here's some criteria.
This is
that
exactly what
the
you're gonna be
planning board
asked.
Expecting
Yeah.
from the Heritage Commission.
Yep.
Yeah.
So maybe you should consider this.
Yep, I think it's defining the scope and defining what exactly the applicant should expect from the Heritage Commission. You know, expect comments on your facade, expect comments on your roof type,
Materials.
texture, material, expect comments on your landscaping, really anything else, you know.
Bus stops.
If I hear about a bus stop again.
Every multifamily has to have a bus stop, right, Tony?
And every road needs a stop sign. Mr. Rugg.
Every driveway.
I think there's some good ideas here we can put together. I think, you know, working with Heritage Commission, I think we can help you, you can help us also. But I wanted to point out there's probably two facilities that would have looked abominable. Well, actually, the first one was Hannaford, which looked like an airplane hangar. That was several times give and take. There was a Taco Bell, which was 4 iterations to get there because they'd have to go back to headquarters and get the approval. So what's there is really a compromise. And of course, we're written up in the Union Leader editorial as Taco Hell. There was McDonald's that was going to go down to X5, which is a traditional McDonald's corporate design, until one of our members brought in several pictures of McDonald's from different places around the country that fit in. You know, they had a historic value to them, so it fit in. And after the second visit, we no longer saw Mr. McDonald. So the problem is, it was a corporate one. They said in the corporate people, the one here is is owned by a separate ownership, and they were been very cooperative working with the Heritage Commission. And the other thing is, there's case law on this also. You have to remember case law, Tony. In 1998, there was Rite Aid, the town of Henniker, that Supreme Court, New Hampshire Supreme Court, said that towns have a right to express their culture, their design, and so forth. And then a year later, there was a similar case in Salem. New Hampshire Supreme Court upheld that and said that the towns can have a say in how they design buildings.
Yes, they can, and that's why we have the only Staples in New England that doesn't have an orange stripe all the way across the top.
Yep. And that was a planning board that actually worked on Home Depot and Staples, so in conjunction with the Heritage. But
As much as I love the Wayback Time Machine we're going on, I really don't want to talk about the Wayback Time Machine.
well,
So
give
let
you a little
us.
sense of history, Jake.
Yeah, I know.
So you get some basis on your decisions.
Mr. Chairman.
Hold on, give me 1 second.
No, let me jump on you because he's leaving off recent, and something that'll hit
All
the
right.
younger people in the audience.
All right. I'll
The
give it
medical
to you.
building at 50 Michael, the original design, I called it the Starship Enterprise, okay? And we have a much, much better design as a result of the committee. I'm done.
Thank you.
And actually, we went back and forth like 2 or 3 times.
Here
on
also.
that.
So,
And
with
had
that,
some
I
good
think what we
recommendations.
I think what we need to. All right, Wayback Time Machine. There is no golf place. I don't want to hear about it.
Gavel, Mr. Chair.
What?
Your gavel.
It's about to get thrown at Mr. D. I'd never do that to you.
Yes, you would.
Yeah, I would. I think we just need to clearly define what we want for a scope. So would we like to, like I said, to me, their scope is a couple things. Roof, facade, and landscaping. Does anybody feel there is more to their scope than roof, facade, and landscaping?
I think the other items
architectural
in the
design.
RSA too.
Well, yes.
I
Yes,
really would
naturally.
advise against landscaping.
Yeah, and I would too. I
All
was
right.
disagreeing with them.
I just think that, I mean, you can.
Don't ever mention a purple lilac again.
You can, I mean, it really, it depends on the situation. If you're talking about a wetland buffer and planting in a wetland buffer, you might want to hear from Conservation Commission. This is also something like, I happen to, aside from all the other trouble I get into, I happen to have a degree in landscape architecture. So I comment on landscape a lot because of the balance between, you know, the built environment and the natural environment. I just think, I
That's why
think
she
that
didn't
it
like my
really
role
depends on the
arborvitae.
situation and what the plan calls for. So if I wouldn't want to just say, just do these things. I would suggest that we stick with, again, the RSAs for heritage and historic district commissions. What do they tell us? And then allow those discussions, those natural discussions to happen, but at least to have those as the criteria. And I don't know that landscaping will come up.
And
Unless you're going to-
neither will the facade of a building or the roof of a building or what the color of the
Well, no,
building
they
looks like
have
because it's not in
they're
our
charged
RSA.
with the
Suggestion.
lookbook.
Yes.
One of you compile a list,
Mr. D, go ahead.
Right now?
bring it forward for a
No.
discussion about what specifically or not specifically you may want to consider for criteria.
So a very, very quick question on, so if we do this and we give them a purview and a scope, which I think works, is it with the understanding that if somebody comes to us, they've done what they recommend, and they come to us, that we are not going to send them back with, like with that medical building, where we were like, no, you need to change this, you need to change this, and you need to change this. Like, is it, if this is the thing where they're, okay, you're going to Heritage, you get this scope, this is what you're gonna answer to, and they do it, and then they come to us, is it with the understanding that we are not going to look at those things that they looked at?
No.
No, not at all.
No, because we still have it would just be like if they recommend something.
Which I agree
that
with,
they
but
don't
now
want
they're
to
just going
do,
through
we
two
have the
rounds
scope
of
to
design
accept
review.
that too.
Well,
Yeah.
That's my point. That's what I'm trying to say.
But I
It's-
think that's why it's important that this board makes clear what the expectation is.
Yep.
But then they're still advising the applicant, not the board. I can't get past it. To me, it's so obvious. I'm just one person, but it's just.
I know what
I
you're
can't-
sa-
I
I
can't
know
get
what you're
past it.
saying. I just don't understand. I know what you're saying.
But if they have that clause in the beginning, like they have suggested, we are just advisory. So the
That's just the tone
developer,
right
the
there.
applicant.
You want them coming out saying, we would recommend to you.
You know, Jonathan is dying to chime in on this.
Yeah.
He's been patiently waiting.
You have something to say?
I kind of agree. I think the disclosure, I think you're about to say, is the disclosure itself. I think if they then go do those changes, then that's kind of on them, right? If they're being told up front, hey, this is advisory only.
Yeah.
We're giving you our opinion, right? In those conversations, then it is on the builder if he changes those on his own. But I do agree. If we scope it down to what we want as a board to kind of guide them, kind of the direction we want to go in. But I think those natural conversations are going to be important because they're going to get some feedback, but they also get that disclosure to let them know that, hey, this is just our opinion. You do what you want with it, you know? So,
Yeah.
just my 2 cents.
Correct.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right.
Be done.
Come on up. Okay, people.
Two Joe, 43 Peabody Road. Where do I start? I just have to outdo you. 46 years in town, 62.
I understand. But 22 of those years you were learning to walk, so those don't count. You weren't paying attention in high school. I remember. Because no one knows I was your high school teacher. Well, they might know now.
The thing about the metal roof is, and Jim Schwabe and I were the same on that, is it just looks all the more commercial. Then you have Hannaford that has it, and what's there with the signs for people, watch out for falling ice? You know, I mean, and you got employees going into whatever building you approve of, and it's just shingles and so better to the eyeball. And metal, commercial looking, that's one thing.
I agree with you 100%, except for that one case that came before us that I can't tell you which one it was because we're not allowed to talk about it. So
Is that recent?
I just got told to stop talking about it. I can't say anything else. So, yeah, I agree with you. I don't disagree with you at all, except for that one case. And again, because you advised the applicant, and the applicant made the change before it got here. And you should be advising us. I just can't, I don't know how else to say it. I don't know what else to do. There's a good chance I'm gonna get outvoted. I'm just one vote.
Now, I always thought these agencies coming into town came to you guys first and got an initial thing, then came to us. No, it's.
I think as in the more recent future, we are trying to get applicants, in the recent future, the recent past, I think we are trying to encourage applicants to come to the planning board for a conceptual review of their plan.
Which is what you saw tonight.
Correct.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was all along, so that's why.
But what you saw tonight was cartoon drawings, not actual
Renderings.
buildable anything, and so there was no colors, there was no roofs, there was no shapes.
Right, but then they come to us for that.
Which, what did we tell them? Oh, that's a different applicant. We told them come back.
Right.
But I think we just do so much like earth tone colors, so they don't look like Manchester.
Yeah.
And we do signage. Who else asked about what we do? We do signage also. I just feel like we do so much. You know, I want this native here, and I want things to look kind of nice.
I don't know, see, and Sue, we've been friends a long time. 4 or 5 years now, and 4 or 5. I didn't say 45. And so, what's Heritage Commission about a sign? We have sign regulations.
Well, Art, help
Aesthetics.
me. Or you?
It's
lighting,
it's,
lighting.
it's,
and-
it's the design, the lighting.
But lighting is in our regulations.
But we go with what, stone? We can do stone, brick. We like lit within, dark.
So this is interesting that you brought that up, because we do have, per our bylaws, part of our review is considerable attention shall be given to, and lighting is one of the things. So we talk about lighting a lot, dark sky compliance, whether or not you have uplit signs, things of that nature. You're right, those may be more within your purview typically than ours, but if they come to you with an uplit sign, you're going to tell them they can't do that. If they've come to us and we tell them that, and they come here and have fixed it, it's no longer an issue. So it's another situation where you're going to have to tell them to go back and fix something where if they've seen us and we've talked about it beforehand, they're going to come to you with a ready-made plan and you're going to be able to approve it.
Devil's advocate here. Shouldn't, before any of that happened, it have come from the internal review that your sign is wrong?
Yeah.
Shouldn't that come from?
Yeah.
Because we have a regulation on it.
Because we
shouldn't
have a
that be coming-
regulation. That's why I don't.
So theoretically, I get where you're coming from, but we see this stuff all the time.
All the time, and it's wrong. So it would theoretically get to the board, and we probably wouldn't notice it, and it's wrong.
Well, by the
Staff
time
would
it
pick
gets
it
to
up.
the planning board, we've conducted a full review.
It's true, because they're still in design review.
The only exception if it's not in design review.
Right.
It's formal.
But even while they're going through.
They don't go to the,
Heritage or
they don't go to the
Council,
Heritage
I'm still
Commission
looking at a
informal.
plan,
Yeah,
so.
they don't go to the Heritage Commission when they
Design
apply for
review.
formal review. They go when they apply for design review.
But I'll just keep reiterating my point. I think you need to establish what you want.
Yeah, what you
from
want out of them.
Heritage.
So I'm gonna leave that to you, Mr. D.
Fine.
And then,
Be glad to do that, Mr.
and
Chair.
then the board will then
We will,
discuss how we feel about.
So can I suggest that other people would also be allowed to make a list? And
Yeah.
and have a chat about at the next
Absolutely,
meeting?
absolutely,
Thank you.
not a problem.
even the Heritage Commission should send a
Just
list
going
to
to say,
us.
I'd love to be part of that discussion.
Sure.
You want to be part of your future? Come on.
Yeah.
You want a hand in your future?
I think that's fine. I think that's fine. So,
So
and
did
then
you have other, I thought you had a list.
Yeah, well, no, no, it was all no, I was writing down what the other people want on those
Okay.
houses and stuff.
I wanted to make sure you had a voice.
Yeah, well.
They're
you
not going
know.
to let us talk about lilacs.
Oh, yeah, landscaping. Let us do it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, you know, things seem to work, right? I mean, whatever they do for,
Is that also in your bylaws? I just don't know about your bylaws.
It is, so it
Who wrote
does
those?
mention site design / landscaping.
Does anybody know who wrote those bylaws?
Came from, I think, the Tim Thompson era.
Nah,
Yeah,
there
I
have
don't
been
know.
been amendments since then.
Yeah, I think that's terrific, but I just don't,
It
I don't even
contradicts.
have an idea about these bylaws.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So everything,
and the
this is
reason
why
I-
we're here, is because everything contradicts the regulations, but we don't necessarily disagree with the contradictions.
Right.
Correct.
So the reason I asked is because those bylaws that you're reading from contradict with our current regs. And so that's a mess. And it's a mess that's our fault. Because we haven't kept up. We colloquial.
You change the bylaws or you change our regs.
Or you change them both.
Or change, yeah, or whatever. So that's where we're at. Right now, we're in a quandary. So, and again, I can't say it enough. We're all trying to get to the same place, and we're all volunteers. And at the same time, we're trying to service the applicants the best that we can within the state regulations.
Mr. Chair,
Hello.
Ted Combs, Town Council. I am one of your voting members, so I think certainly we need to have a collaboration upon what is within the purview, but also we need to also, as a parent here, need to look at what is in the regulations and actually right-size the bylaws. And actually, that then may also change the scope of what they can look at. I think it might actually help and maybe move your meetings along maybe faster of asking direct questions and then also then provide the answers then to the planning department to submit to the planning board. And I think maybe then clearing up the confusions of, they told us this, they told us that, but then they get here and, maybe slight confusion upon when things are asked upon, for example, the one item that
Say
Tony
less,
keeps bringing up. But I think, having either another conversation or I don't know how we can have that conversation going back and forth between the two groups, as we're two quasi groups. Do we need to have it as another public meeting, or can it be a work session that is not a?
So it's a work, this
have
is a
joint,
work, this is a.
I just want to make
this
sure
is a-
with Kelly.
This is a work session.
I just want to make sure with Kelly how we can actually get that done to pass
This,
integration
this
back and
here
forth.
is a work session.
Trying to just speed
Boards.
this along for both groups.
Yes.
That's all I'm trying to
We
do.
would have to do this again at a planning board meeting, yes.
Okay.
In the form
well,
of a
then
work
hopefully someone can come up with what can be done so that this can be sped along instead of using up probably about 2 hours talking about this and talking in circles and shooting a dead horse a couple of times that we've gone in circles.
That's how we get there.
I don't see any dead horses, Ted.
Well, it seems like we've been talking in circles for the past quite a while here.
We have.
and I feel like we need to come with a bit more of a consensus upon where we need to go from here. And that way our fine people can go home.
I think we're at
The
making a list and those involved making a list.
I was going to say, I believe we made the consensus was let's come up with a list of items that we feel as though are within what we want them to perform, do, review, whatever you want to call it, and then deliberate as a board and say, this, yes, no, this, yes, no. And then we have a clearly defined route of how we want to operate moving forward.
And I certainly like the idea about making sure that applicants here at the beginning of
Yes.
every case, this is an advisory board. And that was actually a suggestion that I gave quite some time ago. And Mike, who's probably listening, sorry, Mike, said, yeah, we're not going to do that. So he thought it was inflammatory, or I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but he said, yeah, we're not going to do that. I'm not going to tell the chairperson to do that. So, but I think it's a good idea. I think not everybody that comes before us or you has been in town before. And so they don't know. In some places, every place they go to is mandatory, not advisory. Here, it's advisory. So
It's a RSA, so
it's a RSA, yeah.
It is
Sorry, it is advisory. Yep, my mistake. Yep, you're right. Yep, but at any rate,
Now, we do lot line adjustments, like they said, because of stone walls, like Mr. Steer, I love it, took the rocks and went in the driveway, so I always bring him up as an example. He was, which is, I think is very good.
yeah, but that would have to be an item, because the RSA says only rock walls that delineate a roadway or
This
or
was,
a property
this-
boundary.
that's what This was.
Perfect.
All right. So we have an idea of some marching orders here.
Yep.
A few of us are going to come up with a list of things that we feel as though are pertinent to the purview of the Heritage Commission in any new form of rewording of our bylaws and whatnot for the Heritage Commission. It sounds like you want to do the same. And then we can discuss, we can go through these lists and say yay or nay, and then we'll have an answer for what we're looking for.
At the next meeting?
Sure. There's nothing else going on.
Yeah, sure.
Do we have a full agenda at the next meeting? Do you know? No?
When don't we have a full agenda?
Do we have
Come on.
time? So we're gonna do it next meeting, won't we? So it's gonna be an agenda item.
Yeah.
Great.
Absolutely. Fantastic.
Okay, let's do it.
Anything
Kelly,
else?
What is the date of the next meeting?
I think it's December
4th.
First Wednesday of the month.
the 4th, yeah.
So we got 4th, and then we got the 11th.
Perfect. Fantastic.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members
Yes.
of the board.
Thank you, sir.
Almost every person is online right now, either on desktop or mobile phones. The comfort and accessibility of mobile applications are the main reason why opting for mobile over desktop. In 2018, the number of mobile apps downloaded worldwide was 205.4 billion, which is expected to reach 258.2 billion by 2022. This shift made UI UX designing an integral part of any product-based company. UI UX design is a science that works on improving the user experience and usability of the application. Almost every company, including Facebook, Amazon, and Google, invests heavily in it. UI design is the process of transforming wireframes into a polished graphical user interface. This both enhances a product's usability and creates a connection between the end user and the product. A user experience or UX is therefore made up of many user interfaces, which come together in a seamless flow to form a product. The difference between user experience and user interface is that UX is about the experience a user has with the product or service, while UI refers to the aesthetic elements by which people interact with the product. And UX focuses on interaction design, wireframes, information architect, user research, and scenarios. UI focuses mainly on visual design, colors, graphic design, layouts, and typography. Despite the differences, UI and UX are not entirely different. Both UI and UX are crucial to work closely to determine how a product will function and be visually attractive, with each other influencing the other. Imagine you spend months creating a beautiful website only to get the result that people can't find what they're looking for and struggle to navigate. No matter how attractive and aesthetically pleasing the interface is, Without user experience, users will become frustrated because of its lack of usability and will leave your site. The role of a user experience designer is to understand the customer's journey. That means understanding the target audience, interviewing customers, defining user flows, and conducting user testing. A UI designer's job begins where UX designer's job ends, and that is at the prototyping stage. They take the wireframes and add visual design to make them more usable, aesthetically appealing, and optimized for different screen sizes. The starting salary of UI UX designer in India is 10 lakhs per annum, and once you gain experience, it will be in the range of 18 to 25 lakhs per annum. And similarly in USA, the average salary is $100,000. There are over 1 lakh jobs available related to UI UX design just in India.
Hello everyone, and welcome to today's session on UI UX full course by IntelliPath. The importance of UI UX design can never be overstated. The design of any product and service determines the relationship between a user and a business. And when it comes to the digital environment, the value of the design gets more pronounced. Most of the content that we consume these days are from our interactions with the screens. UI UX designers provides a strong connection between the organization's goals as well as the user's expectations. In this session, you will learn all about the UI UX. So let's check the agenda for the session. So before we move on to the session, please make sure that you're subscribing to our channel and that you hit that bell icon so that you'll get all the latest updates from us, IntelliPath.
Let's understand what is UX and how it is different from UI. Okay, so user experience design is a process of enhancing user satisfaction with a product by improving the usability, accessibility, and pleasure provided by the interaction with the product. So what UX designer does, it design a product in a way which provide a pleasure, satisfaction to the user. Okay, so that's the UX design. And to be able to do that, he or she applies a well-defined process of UX design, right? It is not just like anybody can just start it. There is a well-defined process of UX design, which we will learn later. UX design is not just about making a better UI, but UX design is more about empowering people to achieve more and better. Okay, so what UX goal is, it is not just to make a better interface, but it is to empower people to complete their task efficiently, quickly, and satisfactorily. So that's what is UX design. Okay, so concept of UI and UX design. So once again, this is the same definition, like user experience design is a process of design team used to create a product that provide meaningful and relevant experience to the user. This involves the design of an entire process of acquiring, integrating the product, which not only include the task flow, but it also includes the branding of the product also, because the identification is also very important when we are into the market. So all these things are taken care of. Usability, branding, and the function, like what kind of function or features we have added into that product application or whatever. So that's about the design. Now, how this concept has come. Design is arguably the defining human endeavor that separates us from other species. So apart from laughing, the second thing is designing, which separates us from other creature on this planet. No other creature on this planet usually can laugh, right? Except human. Likewise, design is also to be done only by human. It is not a cup of tea of the other species. We have started using tool from ages, like from the beginning of the civilization. So, and that's how the design started actually. The history of the design, like the known history so far, it came from and it is started by Roman architect when they were creating those buildings. So they are not creating just for aesthetics. They're also, building those buildings for the user need. Like they first understood who are their user and what kind of, building would suit them. So all those things started right there from that time. Now coming back to the computer, because we all are learning, trying to use this design approach in the digital world. So coming back to this is very important. If you will remember, like way back in 1780s, it used to be codes which we used to interact with the computer. Like if you want to have something out from the computer, you write a command, you type a command, and then computer give that relevant information to you or data to you. Then came mouse actually, and then came the icons or windows, and that's when the UX UI skill set, requirement of UX UI skill set started from that time. Earlier, it was the only engineer who used to type command, and computer used to respond. But on the advent of, the graphical interfaces, the GUI